Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission's September 13th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Jackie Sebrian. Commissioners present include Brian Altman, Katie Baruzzi, Sally Cole, Lisbeth King, and Christopher Coleman, and Ross Silverstein. City staff present include Kevin Chen, Matthew Hugh, and Hugh Louch. Chair Sebrian, Matthew, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Sebrian and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the September 13th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, virtual attendees may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name, and then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Kevin, do you have any reports and announcements?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a few update on City Council actions since the last time we met. The City Council recently adopted a resolution for the downtown closures. As some of you know, the eastbound Santa Cruz block, the block between Curtis and Doyle, there's been a closure there for quite a while now. And the City Council has officially made it a permanent closure with the additional improvement of adding the bike lane in. So as a result of that approval, we're also in the process of getting our crew together to actually implement the bicycle improvement, which will run from Curtis all the way to El Camino Real. So I believe I've shared the link to the exhibit with the commission. Happy to answer any questions later on if you do have them. Additionally, we have had a chance to work with the county to add one block of bike lane on Outshoot Avenue. So the county graciously decided to pave that section of Outshoot and coordinate it with the city, and we were able to use that opportunity to put in the bike lane. One block, but it is one block that continues to connect the network for Outshoot. So certainly appreciative of the county's effort on that end as well. If you also were in attendance last night for our city council meeting, you might have noticed that two items also were deliberated last night. The first one was the NTMP item, our neighborhood traffic management program. So some of you have been through the program yourself as a commissioner. Some of you have probably heard of its progress and the process itself. And as you might have noticed if you were at the meeting, there was definitely a desire to streamline that process a little bit more. So staff definitely received some very good feedback from the city council. The next step is for us to go back to the drawing board with some of the feedback that we received from the commission previously as well, to come up with an actual a plan of a process, which will eventually bring back to the commission for evaluation as well. So definitely want to stay tuned for that one. Lastly, the item that was in front of the city council last night was the turn restriction at Oak Grove and Garwood. So as if some of you might have driven that area, it is currently there's a restriction of left turn out. So if you're on Garwood or Merrill, you would not be able to make a left turn. However, through observation and feedback that we have received, we decided that we wanted to kind of take one more step to kind of curtail some of the bad behaviors we're seeing. So now the intersection is you are no longer allowed to make a left turn from Oak Grove onto Garwood or Merrill. So effectively, what that means for that intersection is that it's a right in and right out only for the side streets. So since we got that approval, will be the next step is to get our work order together and then have the contractor implement that design. So certainly I'm looking forward to that as well. And with that, I will conclude my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Can I ask a question? I think so. Yeah.
Kevin, quick question. Which segment of Altshul was it? Is it from Sharon to AV or is it not that whole block?
Not quite that whole block. It's
Okay.
AV to Harkins.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, thanks.
Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Matthew, can you please call for public comment?
Thank you, Chair Sebrian. For virtual attendees on Zoom who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. Then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters and administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for August 24th, 2023. Any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? Matthew, can you please call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair Sebrian. For virtual attendees on Zoom who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. Then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtually raised hands, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments about the minutes, or do we have a motion and a second to accept them?
I'll move to accept them.
I'll make a second.
All in favor? Oh, actually, sorry, Kevin, is that you do that part?
No, that's fine.
Oh,
Go.
all in favor? Oh, right. Oh, okay,
Okay, so the ones that I think were in attendance, great. Thank you very much.
okay. Okay, Kevin Chen, wait. Senior Transportation Engineer, can you introduce the next item, please?
Great, thank you very much. If you can give me a minute here as I'm gonna go ahead and try to share my screen with the commission and everyone else. Great, perfect. I believe at this point, everyone can see the starting slide of our presentation. Great, awesome. Good evening, everyone. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer with the City of Menlo Park. Happy to be here tonight. I am actually accompanied tonight by Mr. Chris Duddy from Samtrans as well. Chris is spearheading the effort, as you might have read from the staff report tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton to Chris.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, commissioners. I'm Chris Duddy from Samtrans, and I'm here to talk about implementing the ECR bus speed and reliability study. I'll give a quick overview of the study and then discuss the bus stop changes in Menlo Park as well. The proposed bus stop changes in Menlo Park. So for those who don't know, ECR is Samtrans's longest route. It's nearly 30 miles, 28 total, over 100 bus stops. That's just in one direction. So 56 miles, 200 bus stops on a round trip. Provides essential connections to Muni, BART, VTA, Caltrain, and also the Transbay at Palo Alto with AC Transit as well. So the goal of the ECR study, really trying to focus on reducing travel times along the corridor to be operationally efficient, improve the quality of work for our operators. So those are the goals. Moving to the outcomes. To do this, we really want to harness the existing transit signal priority on the corridor, El Camino Real or SR 82, and doing that, attracting new riders to support the ridership recovery. So in doing the study, there wasn't really one specific bottleneck on the corridor. Throughout, it was just a very slow route and definitely needs a lot of, I think, kind of a toolkit to improve that. And the issues that the ECR undergoes, it exacerbates, there's inequality with the riders, just with the customers that are using the service. When looking at the speed during COVID, speeds were increased by almost 25%, and that really gave us an opportunity to see that there is that possibility of greatly increasing the speed. And faster, more reliable service was very popular among our riders. Next slide, please. So recommendations from the study. It was approved by our board of directors in December, and we're starting the implementation of it now. There's going to be 2 phases. This first phase is what I'm here to talk to you about, which is more low-hanging fruits, changes in either bus stop balancing, which is removing bus stops, or changing the location of the stops to harness that transit signal priority that I mentioned earlier. Phase 2, which is going to be much larger, is going to have capital infrastructure implementations like bulb outs, potentially queue jumps. And this will be really working with the cities and Caltrans to implement this service. All right, so in Menlo Park, there's one stop that's being proposed to be relocated. The current stop is at Oak Grove, and we're proposing to move it to just south of Santa Cruz on El Camino Real. The reason for the relocation was to pair with the sister stop that is also on Oak Grove, but going northbound. The relocation, I think, is around 80 feet of red curb, but in the how much parking would be removed, I believe it would only be 1 space because there's existing curb restrictions at the location now. Yeah, and any questions? Sorry, okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Chris. So just a quick reminder for the commission, the action that we're asking for you tonight is to approve the parking removal. As Chris mentioned, they are looking for essentially 80 feet worth of red curb. We currently have about 40 feet out there. So what that means is that we're gonna need to essentially remove 2 of the spaces that are currently adjacent to the existing red curb. However, we do have just immediately follow those 2 spaces. There is currently a buffer area, which is about the spacing of a parking stall. So our intention is to go ahead and convert that buffer area back to a parking space. Hence, what Chris mentioned, that the net loss here is 1 space. So just wanted to kind of clarify that. And with that, we are happy to answer any clarifying questions before we can turn it over to the public speakers. Thank you.
I just have a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Is the scope of the conversation and discussion today strictly on this exact bus stop? Or is it worth discussing buses on El Camino in Menlo Park and this line in general? Or is that entirely off the table?
Well, we certainly don't want to veer too far off the topic, although we do have Chris's expertise here. So, if Chris is willing to entertain a few questions about, buses on El Camino, we certainly will kind of take those up. As keeping in mind, we don't want to veer too far off from the topic itself.
My question is, in addition to the red curb, is there any other signage, and what is the signage going to be to make drivers aware that that's a no parking zone? Is there a bus stop sign? And
Yeah, so there would be a bus stop sign. I don't have a good picture of it, but it would be a pole. We're in the process of redesigning our blades, so it would eventually change, but it's about this big here, and then it would have Samtrans and the route number on it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, hi, Chris. I had a clarifying question. On this slide in this map, I
Mhm.
think it doesn't show a northbound stop at Oak Grove, but I thought there was one.
There is a northbound stop on Oak Grove. So there's no changes to it, and so didn't highlight it,
I
but
see.
I believe there's a so there's the blue square denoting where the relocation is proposed, and then following that line, there's like a little blue dot, and I believe that
Oh, I see. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I guess the reason I asked is because I very much agree with the goal of improving speed and reliability and removing bus stops where it's practical. And I wondered why, at least did Samtrans consider removing the northbound at Oak Grove as well, just in the interest of speeding up? bus routes?
So there are a couple stops in Menlo Park, not in this presentation, that are proposed to be removed.
Okay. Okay.
And so in that, it was the kind of Santa Cruz, or sorry, I was describing Santa Cruz to you, and your question was about Oak Grove, correct?
Yes, I just wondered, this is a bit
Yeah.
off topic, but I just wondered if that was under
Yeah,
consideration.
no,
Yeah.
sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
So that is currently proposed to be removed. We do have a process that we're gonna go through to
Okay.
ensure our customers know about it, have a chance to
Sure,
comment on it as
sure,
well. But yeah,
Thanks. And I also just was curious, in the previous slide, I think it referred to transit signal priority,
yeah.
which is a new term to me. And I was interested if you could explain, maybe just to me or others in the commission, what that means in terms of buses on El Camino.
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple, it's definitely a broad term, but generally transit signal priority, when it's active, is essentially the buses communicating with the signals, letting them know that they're approaching, which would give the opportunity, say if the light was about to turn red, I
Oh,
might
I
hold it
see.
for like 3 or 4 seconds to allow the bus to pass,
Okay.
or potentially shorten the time that it would be waiting at the stop as well.
And does
Um,
that exist currently? That
So
technology?
so there was a grant that it was a Caltrans grant, and we were able to install the equipment on, I believe, almost every signal in the corridor.
Mhm.
There is still some refinement that we're doing, but part of this and the goals of the study is to better use that to speed up the bus service on El Camino.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Chris, thanks again for coming out. Start first. Can you tell me a little bit, and again, this might have been mentioned, what will happen to the existing bus stop that's already on place over by Oak Grove? Would that be transitioned back into parking?
Once we are able to successfully move the stop, then yes.
Okay.
Or I guess that's not fully up to me to decide, but yeah, I believe that's the plan.
Sure. I'm sure it's been a while since it's been at its original state. Okay, so next question is really high level, but who would be enforcing the misuse of this bus stop, the proposed stop? Like if there's a car parked in there, is that Menlo Park Police Department? Is that Samtrans police enforcement?
So I don't want to misspeak on that. I could be wrong, but I believe it would be Menlo Park PD. because we would be working with the city to get the red curb and that encroachment permit there. So then in that, the enforcement would come with.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Excuse me, Kevin, will you let me know if this is not a clarifying question? And I'll ask it in the second portion. Thank you. I'm just curious if while you're eliminating stops, as part of the study that you're doing, if there's some way to assess the impact on maybe accessibility for people with maybe some impairment or accessibility needs. Do we know anything about stops where that might be an issue by eliminating a stop?
Yeah, so in terms of just like access and.
Yeah, just if
'cause-
they have to go further.
Yeah, so when we were looking at the stops that are proposed to be removed, everybody walked it to ensure that the spacing was there, it's consistent, and then the existing stops would be consistent with our guidelines for stop spacing.
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Good, thank you. And then last thing, again, if this is for later on, I'll ask it then, but I know that there's some large schools on Valpo with a bunch of kids commuting from the Bay Area. So I'm just curious if when we're removing the Oak Grove stop, if we ever at least communicate it, maybe we send a communication out to some of the larger schools that are nearby in case kids are taking the bus, just because they're time constrained and we want to make sure they know.
Yeah, and I'll make sure when we start doing the outreach of the changes to include the schools on Valparaiso too. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more, Chris, on the topic of parking on El Camino, does Samtrans have any information or perspective on how much of a potential blocker cars coming in and out of parking spots is for the buses if someone has to kind of back in or they're waiting for someone else to pull out and then kind of taking up the lane and that's the same lane that the bus is using? Is that any kind of
in terms of like specific data, Samtrans wouldn't have like any numbers on that. But ideally, cars aren't blocking the bus. Sorry,
yes.
that sounded snarky and I didn't mean that in that way. But I don't have any specific information on the impacts of that.
Yeah, I just kind of, at least with this stop, for example, we'd be adding a parking spot back right in front of the bus stop.
Mhm.
Does Samtrans have a perspective on whether or not that additional buffer, if we didn't add the parking spot back, would be beneficial to the bus to be able to pull out more cleanly or anything? Or is all the space that's listed totally required? And that's generally not an issue at all of dealing with cars and parked cars and that preventing the buses from getting where they need to go?
Yeah, and sorry, when first speaking, I was in my mind, I was picturing the like reverse in parking, which is like
I
very.
mean, that happens too.
Yeah, and it is very time consuming when that happens. But so the space that we've identified would allow our articulated buses to serve it safely and pull in and pull out of that. So it is coming through the intersection, so there's a little bit of room there to lead in, and then they're going to be able to pull out. Ideally, we have bus bulbs at every stop so that we're not going in and out of traffic. Quickest thing to do or best way to speed up the service, because then you're not fighting to get back into traffic. And there's TCRP reports that give like a little bit of identification and time savings. But there's not really any good information on Samtrans and the impact that has. I'll keep going. Sorry. We are doing a pilot study in South San Francisco, where we did kind of it's a company called Zikla, and it's a movable bus bulb. And so we're able to temporarily install it and turn what was a pull-out stop into an in-lane stop. And we're in the process of kind of evaluating that and the impacts that it's had.
really quick, would that recommendation on bulbs come from Samtrans, or would that be something that Menlo Park decides if we wanted to add it ourselves?
I mean, if you wanted to add bus bulbs at every stop, Samtrans would be in full support of that.
So if I might say, Assistant Public Works Director Hulout, so and sorry to cut across you, Chris, about your own plan, but the ECR, the plan, which we can send you guys a link to, does show, and actually I think Kevin may pull up the page of it, does show a preference for bus bulbs at particular locations, and actually has a whole kind of plan for Menlo Park. So we can send this to you guys so you can see it. Actually, I go to the next page. Sorry, Kevin. This is sort of the background data, and for each city on the corridor. And we, as a city, reviewed this as it was being done over the last several years. So you can kind of get a sense if you're interested in more details about some of the things that are included. So this is a stop that is referenced for having bus bulbs in the future. But Chris is right that ultimately us, Caltrans, others have to participate in that kind of conversation as we go forward.
Thank you, Hugh. That was a very good assist there.
Chris, I thank you. I do have a couple other questions here. So I've just been confirming that there is a dedicated right turn lane off Santa Cruz that then turns onto El Camino. So my concern here is like the back end of that buffer, right? When the bus pulls into their dedicated space, and then the right car that's going to turn right onto El Camino can't see beyond the vehicles, the bus's left end. And there's people crossing, given it's a high flow traffic area with Caltrain right across the way. You know, we don't have a no turn on red there, but cars can still kind of go around the bus. People might cross in front of the bus. I mean, jaywalking is technically legal in California now, right? Given it's safe to do so. So my concern is that right dedicated turn onto El Camino, there may be some sort of impeding flow of visibility beyond that bus being parked there, whether it's there for 2 minutes or 10 seconds. I'd just be concerned of a car's visibility. Is there any data on that?
So besides just the spacing that we've identified to allow the bus to serve it, that should be adequate for turning vehicles to move around the bus and then also not be blocking the intersection.
Do you have the distance from like where the bus is going to pull up in front and then how much distance behind of the bus it has to the end of the curb and the crosswalk?
So a typical bus is about 60 feet, or ECR, we operate articulated buses there, which are about 60 feet. So with I believe it's 90 feet total.
It's about a little over 80.
80,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
yeah,
So you would have 10, give or take 1 or 2
yeah,
feet left.
Right.
yeah.
Behind the bus. Yeah.
And
so
in front, I mean, that's combination of what's in front
Yeah.
and behind.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I think I remember from a recent council meeting, I don't think it came through Complete Streets, that the city staff have a change planned for that configuration at that intersection. There's going to be a bike lane. The intersection at Santa Cruz facing El Camino coming out of downtown. Would that change anything that
It
Commissioner
wouldn't,
Coleman is worried about? I'm
right,
trying
it
to
wouldn't
remember what it was
change what
like.
Commissioner Coleman is talking about here. So
Yeah.
with that improvement, we would still have a exclusive right.
There's
turn
still a
lane there.
dedicated right turn, isn't
Yeah.
there? Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
Yeah.
Because
Kevin, do you think that 80 feet, given that it's 60 feet, so 10 on each side is enough and it won't incur on the backside into the crosswalk, even with future enhancements?
Yeah, I think generally it should be okay. I mean, the kind of that distance, that 80 to 85 for a 60-foot operating bus, I mean, I think it's a try and true dimension that's been kind of implemented along El Camino for quite a bit. We haven't really seen any issue with that at Oak Grove, which is essentially a replica of what's going to happen here. And with 10 feet of I certainly recognize what Commissioner Coleman is concerned about, but I don't believe that it's going to be an issue. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on it, and if it does become an issue, we'll make sure to address it right away.
Right, to add more on the front end,
Right.
just because it's such a high pedestrian.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I see where the concern is. With 10 feet, I mean, you generally, as you're making that turn, as you're paying attention to the El Camino traffic, I recognize what Commissioner Coleman is saying, but so far we haven't seen any issue with that configuration.
Yeah, I think, of course, with your expertise here, we can analyze risk, right? And you've probably already done that as to what the risk is of this intersection here and moving the proposed plan to move the bus stop there. I think we're here also to analyze to make sure that if it is identical to the one that's currently in place, that's great. It's a perfect swap. I'd be curious if we've walked it, measured it ourselves. Is that something we're willing to do?
Yeah, so staff, not myself, but one of my colleagues went out and measured the existing stop at Oak Grove, and I believe it's I think the dimension he mentioned was like 83 feet or something like that. So
Yeah.
very close to what
Okay.
we have here. Yeah, or what we will
Yeah,
have
I'm
if it gets approved.
confident if it's
Yeah.
concrete in the decision, it's safe and provides adequate access to pedestrians and cars to, move around and flow traffic isn't obstructed.
Absolutely.
I think we're still in clarifying questions right now, unless do we have public comment?
So hang on, where am I? Any clarifying questions? Matthew, can you please take public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees on Zoom who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. Then you can step up to the podium and make your comment. I see one raised hand from Adina Levin.
Aha, thank you so much. That just popped up.
Sorry about that.
All right, so Adina Levin, Menlo Park resident. We're various advocacy organization hats, but I'm speaking for myself tonight as a Menlo Park resident who uses the El Camino buses, the 296 bus, and the Caltrain, depending on the day and the travel need. And I wanted to, first of all, generally support this direction and ask some clarifying questions and maybe make some, which through the chair, the commission may be interested in finding out. So one key question is that crossing of El Camino closest to the logical southbound side of Santa Cruz. I think that is scheduled to get a pedestrian crosswalk. I don't think that you can cross there now. And so, but I think that there is a plan to have both legs of the crosswalk. And I think it would be extremely helpful to know when that is going to be done with relating to this bus stop change, because as there are people that are going to be coming from places, including, let's say someone is coming from the library and they want to take the bus, and they're going to, the desire line is going to be to cross at that side. So is that project going to be done? The second question is, will there be signage there that will be directing people to where the train is and where the other buses are? Because that's a good location to make those transfers, but it may not be obvious to somebody how to get to the 296 and to the Caltrain from there. The other suggestion is there any thought about putting bike parking near there, which this is not? The buses have a limited number of bike spots, and so it is useful to have bike parking near the bus for someone that may want to get on the bus without their bike. And lastly, those sidewalks are very, very heavily used and kind of narrow. And so would want to suggest and hope that there's an extra review given to accessibility for people with wheelchairs and strollers and luggage and any other needs to be able to get through there to and from the bus. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Matthew.
No worries. Seeing no further virtual raise hands, I return the meeting to the chair.
I have two public comments here. The first one is Monica Pelozzi.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind giving me 1 second, let me turn on your mic. My apologies. Please go ahead and start.
So I'm the owner of Mama Coco Cocina Mexicana, where the bus stop wants to locate right in front of my door. This would devastate my business tremendously. I'm recovering for COVID still. Santa Cruz Avenue is closed, and most people are forgetting the business that we are in the Camino Real. If you put this bus stop in front of my business, a huge, imagine my small business, customer sitting, and all of a sudden it has a huge bus in front of you. I'm not gonna survive. I'm not gonna survive. It's a family-run business. I have people who work for me that I consider my family. They're supporting their families. I'm still recovering from COVID. I cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. I'm begging you to reconsider this. You're taking 2 parking spots that I use all the time for customers that are on wheelchairs. They cannot walk and park on the downtown in Melo Park. And there are really convenient 2 parking spots from my business that I can easily go into my restaurant and dining. You're taking 2 parking stops. Yeah, they say they're gonna regulate 1 more spot in front, but it's a huge bus. I'm begging you to go and walk the street and see how it goes. I'm telling you right now that I'm begging you to reconsider this, because if you approve this bus, that's the last nail in the coffin for my business. Please, I'm begging you to not approve this. I'm hurting right now, really hurting right now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Elisa Sperlin.
You got it right. The pronunciation, you got it right. Hello, thank you. I'm Elisa Sperlin. I am the owner of Peabody Fine Art Gallery and Framing, which is right there on that corner. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've never spoken before council before, so please bear with me. I've written a couple of things down. Mr. Coleman or Councilman Coleman, you had exactly one of my concerns, which was the visibility turning right from Santa Cruz Avenue onto El Camino. I have a lot of windows in my business and I see not every accident, but a lot of accidents on that corner going both directions. And so that was one of the first things that came to mind when I thought about that situation occurring. The second one is the way those parking spaces, as I understand it from the drawing, there will be the bus lane, there will be 2 parking spaces, then the buffer, and then they're proposing taking away those 2. But that buffer, you're creating 3 in a row, which will end up having somebody on El Camino trying to parallel park. And that just does not seem like a very safe situation to me. I think previous planners got it right in producing those buffers. It does not seem like a good idea. It's even tough watching it happen on Santa Cruz Avenue where you don't have the traffic at the volume that it is or at the speed that it is. And I hear we're only losing one parking space. We're redoing, we're repurposing everything, but we're only losing one parking space. But I hope that I can get you to understand what one parking space means to a business. We've lost a lot of them on Santa Cruz Avenue to the streeteries. I'm not against streeteries. I am not. I think they bring something to downtown. But one parking space, especially on that block of El Camino, because the public parking for that block of El Camino, as far as a lot goes, is much farther behind than the public lot that is one street over at Oak Grove. Their parking lot is a lot closer than the one that is for us back behind the Bank of America building. And so for our customers to get to that spot is very difficult. But one parking spot for somebody who's open 10 hours a day is almost 7,000 customers a year, 7,000 of your citizens, of our customers. I don't have a restaurant. And so my customers, it probably is going to equate to about 3,000 because I'm thinking about one customer an hour for the 8 hours I'm open. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of customers who have to find an alternate way to get into our business, to support us, to support the tax base that we try to provide to the city and the services that we provide. So one parking space may seem like not much, but to those of us who are right there on that stretch of El Camino, or any of us actually on El Camino, it means a lot to our customers. So again, please take those items into consideration. With her, I ask that you rethink this. I haven't heard a really good reason that moving it from one spot to another really is improving things, but maybe I just don't have all the info. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Discussion? Does anybody have? Oh, sorry. Do I ask for more hands?
Can I ask some questions?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm curious about, I feel like you might have mentioned this in the presentation, whether having it on the block between Santa Cruz and Oak Grove, approaching Santa Cruz, so in front of, I mean, I'm looking on Google Street View of it, like near Stacks, which is already like a really long red curb. Whether that doesn't get us part of the way to where you're going. So there's still pretty good access to Caltrain and downtown. It's closer to the stop that you were looking for across the way in front of Baroni. And for some reason, that's already red curbed for a really long way. I'm not sure why. I'm just curious about what that would do for, you know, how much of a material difference does it make for the bus to be on the other side of just on the other side of Santa Cruz? It also, I think, makes things a little easier from the turning perspective that we were talking about, thinking about pedestrians, but maybe not.
So a lot of the relocations were kind of guided by harnessing the transit signal priority on the corridor, and that works best when it's far side of the intersection.
I'm so sorry. Can you explain why?
So the goal is that you want to get through the intersection as fast as possible. So if it's near side, you could say the bus is requesting a signal to be extended or to be shortened. It's doing that, and then customers are getting on and off, and so then the signal's going through, and then you're kind of missing that opportunity.
Roughly how many people will use that bus at that stop?
I don't have that exact number. Sorry, I should have had that ready.
Do you
I'm
have a feel
sorry.
like I mean, I don't know what that number is. I do take the bus, but I don't see that many people actually.
Yeah, I mean, I can look it up.
Because that would be the trade-off versus the businesses, right?
Yeah.
Just backing up a little bit, you may not know this, but what was the original reasoning for it being at Oak Grove.
And why it wasn't at Santa Cruz originally?
Yeah, because it seems like it would have been natural if you're putting a bus stop to put it there originally, right? Many years ago, but instead it was put at Oak Grove. Just what was the reason? Is it because it's not in front of a business? I don't know.
No, so a lot of the stops have been on the corridor for decades, going to when I think it might have been, I want to say the 87. I'm blanking on what the ECR used to be. And so those stops have been there since Samtrans incorporated in the 70s. And so I want to go back to just the ridership piece too. Even if the ridership at that specific stop that we would be moving is 5 people, there are stops around it that we are proposing to remove. And so with that, there would be an increase in ridership just from the consolidation of stops too.
And just to jump in real quick, the screen in front of you right now does have the ridership information for Menlo Park, and it looks like we're looking at about 98, so close to 100.
Sorry, is that people who get on or off? Oh, sorry, I see the key, yeah.
Hey, Kevin. Can you speak to Katie's point a little bit about using the red zone already in front of Stacks? I mean, let's put aside the speed with getting through the intersection that the buses are accommodated with now, and just looking at protecting the businesses and using that red curb. Is it a possibility?
Yeah, I'm certainly a possibility. At the end of the day, it is kind of the trade-off, right? So for example, the one that Chris mentioned has to do with sort of circulation, try to get through the intersection as quickly as possible. I will also maybe point to the fact that what Commissioner Coleman had just mentioned in terms of the concern that he see on the other side would probably be more prevalent here. It actually might exacerbate the situation here, because now instead of just the jaywalkers that might be in front of the bus, you are actually at a crosswalk on both ends. And my concern would be more the crosswalk that is crossing Santa Cruz when El Camino is green, because then that leg gets used quite a bit. And if you have a bus right in front of it, if you want to make a right turn, you know, it's hard to see the people that want to get to Peabody. So I would say that kind of also exacerbates the situation a little bit more. But of course, then the pro side would be we already have the red curve there, right? So
What about putting it farther back from the intersection?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at the parking utilization on that block, and I think it's possibly because all of those businesses have parking right behind, like there
Yeah.
is more parking behind the businesses on that block of
Yeah.
Santa Cruz. And it's much more accessible to people because you can get to it from Maloney or whatever. And so it's just a little funkier with the street closure on Santa Cruz and the alley that's one way. And there's not as much public parking, and it does look like the parking utilization. I mean, you could tell me what the actual parking utilization is, but casual observation is the parking utilization on that block of restaurants across from Baroni is higher. And so if we don't ever use that other block, I know that over, we're talking about 100 bus stops, right? That it would be optimal to optimize all of the bus stops. And I'm curious about how much worse it would be, like in terms of efficiency and safety, if we put it in the middle of the block before.
Can I just add to Katie's question before you answer it? Because I feel like it might fit in there. In thinking about the speed of the bus going down El Camino, what sort of trade-off is there in the amount of time that the signal priority buys it versus a bus bulb out that lets the bus load in the lane so that it's not having to go back into traffic? So like if you move it and put it in like on the other side where the red curb already is and the bus stops in line, is that time savings roughly equal to what the signal
That's true,
priority would
yeah.
get it?
Because it's not pulling out in front of traffic. Is that what you're saying? Right. Yeah.
So I couldn't quantify that right now. There'd be studies and there'd be ranges, and so I think there's the possibility that would fall in there somewhere. But just with the transit signal priority, it is that system and like working in that way. Samtrans, we do not prefer to have mid-block stops, partly for access. It makes it so customers are walking the furthest possible if they need to cross the street. So we do prefer far side of intersections.
I completely appreciate that. In fact, I'm like, keep looking at maps on my phone to see how far back it would be. But I think maybe it's worth, you know, taking a look the way this conversation is going. I appreciate the intelligence and innovative ideas of my fellow commissioners, but I think it would be worth taking a look at that place and that piece in front of Stacks. I totally understand you don't want kind of a mid-block stop, but I don't know if it quite would be that, even if it accommodated some of the things we talked about. Not to give too much away about my son's favorite takeout restaurants, but I do agree with Katie that the restaurants along there, people don't really park like, you know, in front of Sultana. Everyone sort of goes around back where the parking is, et cetera. So there's ample parking in there. So I do feel like this utilization is probably pretty low just from my observation. But, you know, I mean, I think my feeling here listening to all the comments is that I think it would be worth exploring at a minimum. You know, just
Yeah,
to-
you know, I think maybe we're stepping way out of bounds here, but you know, the businesses has spoken, right? They're very concerned, and I'm concerned, not only safety risk, but also they're losing business, right? They've provided some pretty interesting data, right? 6,000 people a year, 2,000 people a year. Are we really going to sacrifice their business for a signal program that allows a bus to move quickly through an intersection? I'm sorry, but I mean, we're gonna sacrifice their business, make that decision, presuming that it's gonna be quicker for people to get through an intersection.
Sorry, I don't think the concern is the speed the bus is going through the intersection.
No, but it's getting the bus going to get to their stops and, you know, streamlining their service through.
Yeah.
So-
So it's, I mean, it's not a safety thing. It's, you know, however many riders use ECR every day, get to their job 5 minutes faster, 10 minutes faster, however long it would
And then the
compound.
businesses eat the cost.
Well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, those are the trade-offs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say trade-offs because I think there are a lot of, and maybe this didn't come across. I know you said you, sorry, the person from Peabody, I forgot your name, Alyssa? Alyssa. You had said that you hadn't heard a compelling reason to locate the stop there. I don't want to speak for Samtrans, so Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think there is a value in having a stop near the train station to promote mass transit, a more connection between people using the buses and people using the trains. I think part of the interest of the commission is really to promote those alternate modes of transportation. And so I do agree that it's a good idea to have a stop there. And I also understand that it would take away from the benefit the bus is getting to improve its speed through going through the cross, you know, they're doing the signal priority. But I think that Chair Seabrian had a good point when she said, well, given the fact that the bus isn't necessarily pulling over, but stopping in that lane, it doesn't make them pull back into traffic, which saves some time. And then I think what you were also saying is that that would probably improve the safety or reduce risks of the people making the right turn, right, into Santa Cruz from El Camino there. And because Kevin, you were saying that they might not have as much visibility into people crossing over into Peabody, right, from like the, what's it called, Stacks to the Peabody cross, that now those people wouldn't be going around the bus to make the turn. They'd have to wait behind the bus. And so that would also reduce risk. So so for those reasons, I think it might be worth exploring. I know that's a bit of a twist, but I think it would be, yeah.
What's the frequency? Is it every 15 minutes?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And then currently 20 minutes on weekends and
Okay.
will be 15 eventually.
And we were talking earlier about there's like a phase 2 that was going to expand sidewalks and build shelters and things like that. what's the, is that a funded phase? Is that a real phase or is that fantasy phase?
I wouldn't call it a fantasy phase, but it is gonna take a lot of work with the cities and Caltrans to realize that. And currently not funded.
Because I could imagine the trade-off being less painful for businesses if we were also widening the sidewalk there, creating a proper bus stop and, you know, making it nicer. You know, the sidewalks in El Camino are really narrow and not very compelling. And it's not as comfortable to walk in El Camino if you're, you know, so I mean, if we're thinking about, I mean, is there a future win-win where we could improve that segment, that block of El Camino visually and make it more comfortable, more pedestrian accessible so that if people had to walk from a little farther away, it was not unpleasant. And I just don't know if we have anything like that I don't think we have anything like that currently in our capital improvement plans. But I don't know if there's funding from Samtrans or something to do that. Just trying to think ahead.
For the funding from Samtrans, I like, there's always a possibility. Just I'm not the person that can answer that.
Okay. I mean, the other side of the street has a much nicer space for people who are waiting for the bus. Okay.
Actually, that brings up
So,
one.
a little bit.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
Sorry, Sally. So the primary, on this slide, it says the primary reason is to increase the speed and reliability. Is that correct? Not necessarily to get to the train faster. Is that, so what's the estimate in terms of the increase?
So it kind of depends on the day, or time of day, weekday versus Saturday and Sunday. But one of the kind of the main things that we were aiming for and what we realized, or with COVID and the decrease in traffic, is getting to that 15-20% travel time savings. So on kind of peak periods where the ECR, essentially almost every trip is in either the AM peak or the PM peak, because it's a 2.5-hour trip one way through the corridor. Cutting that down even by 10% would be a significant amount of operational savings.
I also wanted to, I think this is more of a comment to Kevin, but Adina had the point on the, in her comments, one of her points was around bike parking. And I wanted to bring that back around because I do think as long as we are trying to connect these two modes of transportation so they complement and promote each other, we just want to make sure that at that nodes of bus to train or train to bus, we do provide adequate parking. So it got me thinking about that space outside Cafe Brony. I think that's where people were saying the pullout is more extensive there. And I wonder if, as we're talking about that intersection, maybe we go do a walkabout and see if there are some places to locate some more bike parking for people using buses. Thank you.
So the current location is pretty close to the north end of Caltrain. It's not a terrible location, but if putting it by stacks is less efficient because of signal timing and things like that, is the status quo where nobody's used to parking and businesses aren't really using that frontage? Is that really?
So for the existing stop, there is the harnessing TSP to better utilize it, but then also just making our system more seamless and uniform. So it would be pairing with the northbound stop better, which we're currently not doing. So we do have the stop at Santa Cruz now, and so this relocation would also be to better locate it, and then just having customers able to navigate the system a little bit better too.
Are people frequently going back and forth between north and southbound? Is that like a normal movement?
So if you do take the bus somewhere, hopefully you would take it back. But
Got
would
it.
still be
Okay,
the different
so-
direction.
So, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. So for wayfinding, et cetera, it's a little bit more convenient. Okay.
Yeah.
I also think there's something positive to have a bus stop closer to our downtown. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Caltrain is very wide and you can board anywhere, but whatever proximity we can have towards getting people to our various shops and services has merit. Whether or not this is the specific place that's the right place is a whole different question, which I'm don't know.
Yeah, I do agree with the benefit of having it close to downtown. And I don't know exactly how many people take the train and get on a bus, but living near there, I see a lot of people with luggage coming off the train. So I do think if we can make it work near Santa Cruz, that would be ideal.
I have a question for the commission. Kind of one of the bigger trade-offs that we're trying to evaluate is whether or not a bus stop in front of businesses would hurt them. There's an argument to say, hey, my customers park here and they need that parking spot in order to be a patron of my business. And there's another argument that says the bus stop right in front of me previously took 98 passengers a day to a location a block and a half away, and now they're taking people to my front door. Is there a potential where those people would then be new patrons of those businesses on that block, and that could benefit things? I'm not making an assumption or an assertion. I don't know if people have a perspective on whether or not that would more likely harm or help.
It is quite possible. It really is. I mean, just speaking from experience in my work environment is you could put a sign on the bus and work with Samtrans to promote your shops on the bus. And that may incline customers to go to your shop right off after they get off the bus. That's just examples of what I've done in the past, but it is quite possible.
Probably a little more possible for Mama Coco than for Peabody.
Yes, there would be differences. But I don't want to forget that they still may hurt, right? There's a probability, right? But there's also the probability that it's the opposite.
Yeah, I do think there's a possibility that it would bring more people who ride the bus who aren't familiar with the restaurants or the businesses there. It would bring those businesses to their attention. I may have misunderstood. I got the impression in the public comment that part of the concern was the customer experience of buses being right in front of the restaurant. Was that your understanding? Okay. Yeah.
You have a comment.
I mean, as somebody who had a little kid who was really into the buses and the fire trucks, I think, there's some people who would see a frequent bus stop with being a great way to have a comfortable meal with a toddler, because they could basically watch the buses. I'm sorry, it's not, I'm looking for silver linings here.
So we're talking about moving a bus stop from one location to another. And our position is either that having a bus stop would hurt you or it would help you in terms of local businesses. And so either we would be hurting or helping wherever the bus stop is now versus wherever the bus stop would be. And that's not to say, I mean, and I don't want to make a judgment over kind of which is more important, or whether or not the local businesses having or not having a bus stop versus parking. When we talked about the existing location after the bus stop was fully moved, if it were to be moved, would then be turned into parking. So we'd kind of be replacing something like for like, and for me, I don't see a compelling enough reason to favor one establishment versus another. I also am not convinced that it would help versus hurt any given place of business. And because of that, I'm personally comfortable with moving the bus stop and having it prioritize all of the thousands of people who go through. I mean, it's not only the people who use the stop, but it's also the people who, anyone who goes from Redwood City to Palo Alto and through Menlo Park would be benefited by having things somewhat streamlined. And I don't know if it's 10% or, I mean, one individual bus stop probably isn't 10%, but it compounds. And so I don't know if anyone else is kind of convinced on that, but that's my perspective right now.
And just to follow up on that, your perspective, thank you for providing it. Was there, Kevin, is there any possibility of extending the park? Yeah, I know that we talked about it's just taking away one space, but because the comment about buffers and the value of buffers on El Camino in terms of parking, did we look at extending the parking zone more toward Menlo Avenue along El Camino? So if you're on El Camino, if you're on El Camino southbound, you've just passed through Santa Cruz Avenue, you've got these businesses we've been discussing on the right. As you approach Menlo Ave, is there any way of establishing more spaces?
Yeah, we can certainly take that into consideration. Obviously, depending on the outcome of the meeting tonight. One of the things that we typically would do with a space like this and recognizing El Camino is probably a little bit of a higher speed than other streets. We would have sort of a, if you want to call it a maneuver area, if you will. So if you imagine your space being about 22 feet wide, which I think the spaces will probably be about 20 to 21 feet or so, what we would do is we would take 4 feet from each space, just put an X through it. And then that way that becomes sort of the navigating area. So right to the point about people maybe not comfortable doing parallel parking, if a car is very far or on one end or the other, that obviously makes it a little bit more difficult. So from a kind of a practice standpoint, we always like to kind of create that space in between, or that maneuvering space in between spaces to allow that to be a little bit more comfortable. So those are things that we most likely will implement here, but certainly kind of to your point about, can we push those spaces, looking beyond just that first space, right? And then see if we can make the spaces a little bit longer, a little bit easier for people to maneuver. We can certainly do that if that becomes part of the action tonight. Yeah.
I have another question about this sort of general vicinity. So there are two things. One is that I feel like I remember reading recently that bank that's behind those businesses I might have seen it for rent recently on a business website. Is that bank still operating with all of their sort of exclusive parking, Kevin? Yeah,
It's still
okay. All right. Seriously, there was some bank downtown that was like for lease. Oh, it's the other one. Okay. I mean, I also think there was just a bill moving through the state that was basically allowing cities to require businesses with underutilized parking lots to do sharing or something like that. Kevin, am I hallucinating? Do I remember this correctly?
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating that?
Okay, there's some bill about parking sharing going through the state.
With private businesses?
Yes, I think so. Basically, I'm looking at the fact that there's a private parking lot that people can't use right behind these businesses that probably isn't used outside of bankers' hours, and wondering if there's an opportunity to explore getting some access to some of that parking for some of the businesses that are.
I'll just pipe up and say, I hope this is all right, but because I'm down there all the time at night. So that the B of A spaces are highly utilized at night. People going to Left Bank and can't remember the name of the Chinese restaurant, but that's kind of a hub. So that little parking lot is pretty crammed at night. Yeah.
Okay, I thought I remembered there being signs that said you couldn't park there.
I know everyone parks there at night.
Okay.
You can't. Well, it says like you can't, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But people do.
Yeah.
Okay. All
But I
right.
think we need to look.
Sorry, are you referring to AB 894?
Maybe.
Oh.
I'm really good with numbers.
It just describes under those circumstances, new developments with parking lots. So it might be out of that scope.
Oh, I see.
Mhm.
I think we need to consider the public comment for what it is, which is the primary access to Peabody is right there on El Camino and on Santa Cruz. There is no rear entrance. That is where people enter. And Cocoa, the same thing. The primary entrance is on El Camino. So we will directly inhibit their businesses if we place the bus stop there. If there is an alternative to relocating that bus stop where we do not impede upon their livelihood, I think we need to consider it.
Do you have a feel for Oak Grove versus Santa Cruz crossing El Camino, which is busier with bikes and pedestrians? I would assume Santa Cruz is busier than
Purely
Oak Grove.
From a
for-
numeric
for-
standpoint, probably.
For bikes, kids going to school,
Absolutely.
that type of thing. So would be safe to say Santa Cruz is more of a corridor than Oak Grove for multi-mode bikes and kids and pedestrians?
I would say Santa Cruz is definitely more pen and bike. I think from a characteristic standpoint, Oak Grove is definitely different than Santa
Yeah.
Cruz, obviously.
Yeah.
Given Santa Cruz is downtown area, more attractions, et cetera. So
Sure.
I think purely from a numeric standpoint, certainly we'll have higher volume there. Right.
I think
And I just wanted to kind of touch back on the parking a little bit. As part of the Ravenswood Crossing project that I believe Speaker Levin had mentioned, there is a possibility that we might be able to add one more parking space on that stretch of Santa Cruz. And of course, allowing us to kind of reshuffle that spacing a little bit. Obviously not part of this project, but I just wanted to kind of conclude that note a little bit more as well. And then also in response to Speaker Levin's question about Ravenswood, that it will have a new fourth crosswalk.
What's the timing of that? Because it seems like we should get that done before
We're still working on that. We're working with Caltrans on a few design elements. And as some of you know, that's typically a pretty lengthy process. I don't want to commit to a timeline at this point, but we are working on multiple fronts on different elements of that intersection. Yeah.
I mean, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 6 months, like, I know I know you can't commit to a timeline, but
Right.
I think Adina's been waiting for it for like 20 years.
I know a lot of people have been waiting for that one. If I really have to put a number, less than 2 years, hopefully. But don't quote me on that.
For the crosswalk that would connect the library side of Ravenswood to the guild side of Ravenswood. Yeah.
Sorry, it went right out of my head. It'll come back in just a minute.
I would be more comfortable with it. So the people who aren't speaking here are also people whose livelihoods could be affected, right? There are people who take the bus every day who are living close to the margin. They're trying to get to work on time. It takes a long time. I don't want to forget about those people. And I also think that our public transit is hanging on by a thread right now. We have a lot of challenges keeping it going and making it viable. And so making it more user-friendly, like this is what Caltrain's going through too right now, trying to convert from a commuter rail to something that people can reliably take, any time of night or day year round, so that people are not quite so dependent on driving. And I do want to support Samtrans's efforts here. I wish it were more quantifiable. It's easy to quantify the loss of a parking space to a business. It's hard to quantify the loss of the inconvenience of a stop. It's a little tricky. I do.
Problem is broken, don't fix it.
Well, no, the problem is broken. I mean, I
It's
don't.
hard to
I don't-
quantify that's
yeah,
broken.
yeah, it's broken. I mean, it's hard. It's slower and less reliable than it should be. What I was going to say is if there is a way to squeeze more parking spaces in, I'm much more comfortable with it because I do recognize the need for all of these businesses on this block to have the parking. I know I don't know, I just don't think without finding more parking, it's going to be a great move.
Can I ask you another question really quick? The transit signal priority thing, is that a thing that is already in operation, or is that a thing that will be in operation in the future?
It's already in operation.
Thank you.
I mean, it sounds like we have two different kind of approaches this that are being discussed. One is, could we, there's general consensus that it's a good idea to have a bus stop closer to the train station and downtown for the reasons that were provided. But maybe some people on the commission feel, could we do just a little more fact finding on exploring whether we can add parking on the, on the southbound side between Menlo and Santa Cruz? Can we see if that's possible? Or can we just take a look at the feasibility of locating this stop outside the Stacks red curb, and what are the pros and cons of doing that? Or another camp potentially is, we hear what the businesses are saying. It's possible that the businesses will gain by having more bus people coming off buses outside their businesses. And so for that reason, we feel comfortable moving forward with the plan at hand. It seems like those two different approaches have been discussed. Hugh, it looks like.
Yeah, if I can just jump in real quick. So one thing I think that hasn't come up, just to be clear about the approach. So and Samtrans staff, Chris has made this clear, and I just would caution you that Samtrans as an agency, and I say this not about Samtrans specifically, about bus agencies, is not going to be interested in creating a new near side stop. So there's an existing far side stop. They're interested in moving it. I don't see a point in pursuing that. And like we wouldn't pursue it. I can't imagine they would want to. But also note that that's a turn lane next to Stacks. It's not it's not just a red curb area. So that's a completely different order of magnitude of evaluation anyway. So I don't think there is a near side stop option that's really we can think about putting on the table here. There's sort of keeping where it is, and there's relocating it to be consistent with the way they're trying to reorganize their stops. So just wanted to kind of make that clear so that we don't necessarily spend too much time going down trying to figure out in between options that are not really going to be super probable.
Well, although Hugh, maybe you can answer one question for me though. I don't know about the width of the sidewalk in front of Stacks, if it's quite a bit wider maybe than the narrow one on the other side of Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Is there a possible for a
They
puller?
tend to be, the sidewalks on El Camino, except where we've had new development, are generally narrow. And then of course in front of Menlo Center and that area, of course, they're quite a bit wider because there's a giant plaza there. But other than that, they're kind of consistently fairly narrow. They might vary a little bit, but there's not, it's not like in front of the new middle plaza or in front of Springline where, as part of the specific plan, we require 10-foot wide sidewalks now with development, but so these other sort of previously developed places all have kind of narrow, generally 5 or occasionally 6 feet sidewalks in front of them.
Is there a way if we that like if we approve moving the bus stop that we can put priority on creating like the sort of the bus bulb out, so that in effect we would be looking at trying to improve the quality of the sidewalk experience there, so that like the sidewalks are going to be bigger because the bulb out, and so that there's an improvement that's happening at the same time. And I would echo, I think, what everybody else here is saying, and that how much I really would like to see us look at all the parking along that stretch so that we can see, like, is there wiggle room even in those like buffer zones along that stretch to sort of recreate those spaces that are being absorbed by the bus. But I guess like it's definitely a complicated decision for me. And certainly to Commissioner Bruzzie's point, like we're not hearing from the bus riders here, and they are an important piece of the puzzle. And that like 2 hours is a really long time to get from San Jose to Daly City or Palo Alto to Daly City. And so I think that whatever we can do to increase the time will help increase the use of the bus because, so anyway, I guess I'm not sure what a motion would look like, but I feel like wanting to prioritize that bus bulb out so that it's kind of an inline traffic stop and can lead to some sidewalk improvements in that area. And also relooking at the parking, I think would be kind of how I think it would be able to move forward, but.
Yeah, if I can, Chair, maybe I can just say a couple things about that. So I think that, Kevin shared it, and we talked a little bit about the sort of broader plan that Samtrans has, and we showed you the Menlo Park segment, but there are many other segments. Though a bus bulb out costs money, and so would need to be part of, a kind of coordinated set of improvements that we might make, and we might not just want to do that in Menlo Park, but coordinate with our neighbors. So absolutely, I would say like there is this plan, like many things, we have plans, right? They have plans. It's a good plan. It really sets up a strategy to make the bus more productive and more useful for more people. They already have. I will note, and I'll speak a little out of turn for Samtrans here. They are actually, apparently, I heard one of their staff say that they're exceeding their pre-pandemic ridership. So they're actually doing pretty well, and they're doing it by kind of focusing on the people who most need public transit. And so like the new routes in Bellhaven and East Palo Alto that's operating has been done to focus on that, and their whole route reconfiguration, of which this is kind of not exactly a part, but a parallel effort, is really about folks, as you say, who haven't been heard from, who are the folks who tend to be some of the lowest income folks in San Mateo County using this transit service. And so that kind of focus of them has actually brought them back to their pre-pandemic ridership, which is kind of great. But so that all being said, like, so bus bulb out, kind of bigger thing. I think we could definitely take direction to continue to look at that, maybe not just here, honestly, but other places as well, as a part of a more coordinated strategy for El Camino Real. We have a variety of plans for El Camino Real, which many of you know, and at some point those will need to come back, and they'll need to come back in a coordinated way, because we can't just move one thing in one place. I think we need to focus a little bit on that more comprehensively. And then in terms of parking, I just, sorry to correct my esteemed colleague, senior engineer Kevin Chen, but the addition will be, I think, 2 to 3 parking spaces down closer to Menlo if we're able to do the design we have preferred. We're working with Caltrans on that now, and I also am hopeful that it'll be less than a year, not less than 2 years, but that's just my perspective. And then ultimately we can add parking spaces very likely back eventually, down by the other bus stop that we'd be moving, that those could certainly come back in the short term. Although again, I just want to make sure we're all thinking about this in the context of there is a sort of general plan to remove all the parking from El Camino Real at some point in the future. That's something that needs a lot more discussion, but there is this sort of broader context of other infrastructure that has been imagined along the road. So, I get it that this is sort of feels very immediate and now, but there are these sort of broader other things that are out there that we need to think of sort of comprehensively eventually. And those are likely years off at this point, but just want to provide all that kind of context for as you think about making a motion on this particular item.
Hugh, you said a lot of things in a short period of time. So I just think we need to pause for a moment and make sure we are clear about our understanding about one aspect of what you said, which is, so part of what we're talking about is if we add this bus stop southbound between Santa Cruz and Menlo, can we, instead of having the outcome be as proposed that we are losing just one space, can we actually add additional parking along that block, right? And so Kevin said that potentially, yes, when the Ravenswood El Camino intersection adds that crosswalk, potentially we could add more parking there. He said maybe under 2 years, you're saying sort of under a year. But what did you say, Hugh, about the potential number of spaces that could be added?
Oh, I think it's at least 2 spaces, and it might be even 3, but yeah. that's because we have a little pocket there, and maybe let's say 2. I know it's more than 1 space.
And that's part of that plan. Like that's been
Yeah.
evaluated by staff.
We brought this to, so we can send that back out again, but we brought, remember the whole set of El
I do remember
Camino,
that,
the owl
yeah.
improvements. Yeah, so that included a focus on that one, and some proposed designs there. And then, but also other improvements at other locations.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a reason that none of the parking spots, at least through my view on Google Maps, on El Camino are handicap parking spots? And that if we want to prioritize people who really need to walk the least amount of distance, that it's all in all likelihood, those will be the people who have to park far away and then really have more mobility issues. And if we could reserve a parking spot for the handicap, that would be awesome. And we should think about that everywhere.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's what one of the public commenters have mentioned, that
Yep.
this, right, that there was some
Yep.
people who need to access your restaurant who are handicapped. Okay,
Yeah, and they can't just park across
right.
by the ballet school.
We should
Right.
have that
or
on every block,
10
actually.
minutes.
Right.
It might actually be legally required. I'm trying to remember. Hugh's got his.
I wouldn't. So question, just so I'm under, I know we can't say exact timing on things, but if this bus stop were approved to move, like what would be the approximate timing of it actually going live there?
And we're talking about strictly the bus stop itself.
The bus stop actually moving to Santa Cruz in
Yeah.
the location that's in the staff report.
Right. So with tonight, assuming a approval from the commission tonight, then there is a 15-day appeal period. So
Mhm.
any business resident
Yep.
Of Menlo Park, or well, it doesn't have to be Menlo Park resident, it could be business owners, they could decide to appeal the decision.
Yep.
And at that point, then we'll bring this item to the city council for a final deliberation. So, and that would be kind of additional timing on top of that. Assuming we get no appeal, then it's approved and we're ready to go. Then it's a matter of kind of creating the work order and getting our contractors out there to paint, and then working with Samtrans to make sure that the signs are, the bus stop signs is ready to go, and et cetera, et cetera. So that will be an implementation period as well.
I'm trying to get it in your experience. Is that like 6 months?
Chris, is the sign ready to go or is still being manufactured?
Sign could be ready to go.
Could be ready to go? Okay.
But just our timeline. So we are doing this throughout the corridor and meeting with cities and having these same conversations. And we're trying to time it when we can also increase the frequency on the ECR as well, the weekends, because there are going to be changes, people are going to be impacted, but kind of pairing something good with something that we also just need to do to improve our service. And so ideally it would be February for us, but that is also dependent on the cities and us kind of grouping these all together for implementation.
Can I throw an idea out there? What if we, so it sounds like this isn't going to happen right away anyway. What if we bracketed this or batched it or whatever with the changes that Menlo Park is working on with Caltrans to the intersection at Menlo and Ravenswood? So in other words, it becomes safer and less painful for businesses if we can add that crosswalk. It's safer for pedestrians, we're adding the crosswalk, and safer and more palatable for businesses if we are indeed able to add a couple of extra parking spots. And if Samtrans is doing okay with ridership right now, and you're sort of working on this longer term plan anyway, would it be terrible to leave the bus stop where it is until Menlo Park has its ducks in a row and has finished the changes that we're making to that other intersection? I mean, what do people on the commission think about that? Because honestly, this will get appealed. Even if we approve this, it's going to get appealed, and then you have to take it to council. It's going to take a while anyway. At some point, maybe we should get the crosswalk done first.
Right, if the item gets appealed, typically then we need to start looking at the city council calendar and depending on the the number of items that those calendars have, obviously that changes our schedule. So
I have one question to follow on her question. Going for the same goal, right, of like batching something with something. Is there a way to separate the creation of more spaces between Menlo and Santa Cruz from the Ravenswood Crossing project? Is there a way to like take that out of it and put it with this project and then say that, well, no, yes?
No, the answer would be no, because part of the creation of those parking spaces require additional conversation with Caltrans, which is part of the conversation on the crosswalk itself. So the parking spaces are a result of something that we're hoping to improve at the intersection. So the short answer is no, we cannot separate the two. Yeah.
So I do take Adina Levin's point quite seriously that not having that crosswalk is not great for this bus stop, and that it might not be good to move the bus stop until we have the complete intersection at Menlo Ravenswood. I think, it just, to me, it seems like there are potential safety issues there and there are definite convenience issues there that probably make it less appealing for people who are currently using the bus. I also was looking at the Thames data, and there are a lot of right hook pedestrian collisions at the Menlo, at that intersection. And so, I mean, sort of thinking through that a little bit and making sure we can figure out like leading pedestrian intervals or something to make it a little safer would probably also be a good thing.
Could you could you just walk me through the logic of we need
Can
Ravens?
sorry to jump across here, but if I might, I think I heard Adina say, Miss Levin, I should say Santa
Can you talk
Cruz.
a little louder?
Oh,
Just-
sorry. I think Miss Levin mentioned Santa Cruz, but the new crosswalk's on Ravenswood and it's at /Menlo, and it's the far side that we're adding. So there's really not a kind of connection between this bus stop and that new crosswalk. In terms of what I think there was just a little bit of confusion about where we're adding a crosswalk and where the bus stop is. This bus stop is right just past Santa Cruz, and that is actually on the far side of Menlo, and then across to Ravenswood that be adding that crosswalk. So the existing crosswalk that's close to it, so they're both sides of Santa Cruz have crosswalks, and then that first side of Ravenswood that you come to also has a crosswalk. Yeah,
Yeah, I
there
was
we
trying
go.
to draw the connection.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I don't do the bus bike hops that former Commissioner Levin does on a regular basis. And so I think I do trust her user instinct a little bit, but I also see what he was saying.
Right, so for your point of reference, this is the bus stop that we're talking about here. The crosswalk that Ms. Levin mentioned is this crosswalk right here.
Can you use the pointer to show what the proposal is that's going to Caltrans about the Ravenswood intersection with regard to additional spaces? in
Right,
that
so
block?
there will be we're asking for a bulb out right here at this corner, the Pizza corner, Mountain Mike's Pizza. And then if we were successful with that, we'll be able to create a few more spaces behind that, which is currently a right turn lane right now.
Because you take away that.
Because we're taking away the right turn lane.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So just point of reference in terms of distance.
And it's a terrible practice to have a mid-block bus stop, right? Even like a little bit farther from the curb. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I trust you. You don't have to explain the mechanics of it. I'm just, it's okay.
Does anybody have any feelings about putting forth a motion? I guess one of the things I would say in listening to it all is that in the long term, it feels like the right decision to be moving the bus stop to a place that we can take greater advantage of the kind of infrastructure that we're putting in place to make the public transportation work better. And so in the long term, it makes sense to put it on this side of the intersection because of the signal priority. And so I absolutely see why we would do that. I can see in the short term, why that is super challenging for our businesses, which are what keep our town so great. So I guess what I'm wondering is if we approve this tonight with the assumption that it would probably be appealed, can we add some recommendations? Can we add, like, include the recommendations of the things we'd like to see in terms of looking at the parking along that space, and that we would strongly encourage us to look for creating a bus bulb out there, and then
In a handicap spot.
and a handicap spot. Yes. And so that we can move forward and continue the conversation, essentially. Like, it sounds like if it gets appealed, it's going to continue the conversation at the city council level, so that it's not finished. But I think it's walking into the area that I feel like we need to go, and trying to be sensitive to how that impacts people around it as we make those changes. So any thoughts about a motion that might look like that?
So if I can just jump in real quick before we kind of proceed with that. I would say generally speaking, so on the topic of the ADA parking space first, typically in order for us to have a ADA space on the curb, we would need to have additional width on the sidewalk. If you think about the ADA space, there's the access aisle that's next to it that you typically have that. So in order for us to have an ADA space, we're going to need a space for that in addition to the sidewalk. So it's not typical to be able to have ADA space on the curb unless you provide that space, and the existing sidewalk does not allow that. So as much as we would want to, if we want to put an ADA space on the curb, I mean, we're looking at a somewhat significant improvement on the sidewalk. So while I'd be happy to kind of accept that as a condition, I also want to be cautious that it's not going to be easy to accomplish. So as you're making that motion, I don't want that to kind of be part of your judgment, knowing that it's probably not going to happen. If it does, it's going to take a while and some capital.
I think if we feel strongly that we should at least, I think there's a way to do this where we could strongly recommend that, or ask the staff to stop you. Stop, talk, don't talk. We could say something like, we want to make sure that, we've evaluated this area for adequate accessibility spaces, including on Santa Cruz. Maybe there's a little pocket there on the other side of Peabody, and, that there's possibility there, but just that we assert that it's a priority to the commission, and that we ask the staff to look into it, not just at that one curb on the El Camino side. Okay, Hugh.
Yeah, I think you said, thank you, Commissioner Cole. I think you said exactly what I was going to suggest, which is that, making it a general point that, you have a concern about the amount of ADA, handicap parking that's available, and that, you'd like to see further look into that. Something that, and then, it's impossible to always pick the exact spot, right? And you have to think about all the factors that Kevin is saying, and then of course, where other spots are, and trying to distribute spots, and yeah, we may have some issues there. So I definitely appreciate that that's something, and that's probably a little bit, it goes beyond this, right? It's something that's broader concern about where there are kind of handicap spots available. And I don't know that honestly, we have a full accounting of that. So something that that would probably be something we need to look into further.
So, yeah, I guess I can go. So given that it's kind of a short and medium and long-term priority for me, and hopefully kind of the commission overall, to promote public transportation, and that we've kind of recognized this as being the best spot for the bus stop for the bus route that takes, can you remind me actually how many people take the bus route on average a day? Like, not necessarily a specific stop, but just like ridership. I mean, I know it's in the
for
thousands.
Samtrans, around 20,000.
For ECR?
No, so I believe around 3,000 to 4,000.
3,000 to 4,000. So thousands of people it affects every single day, and that to me is a priority. also, given that I'm personally unconvinced on whether or not this would help or hurt local businesses, and if it does, then any business, I mean, right now, there are multiple businesses that the current bus stop is in front of. And so if adding the bus stop benefits businesses, then we'd be harming others. And if taking away the bus stop benefits businesses, then we'd be harming others. And so given that, to me, I kind of see that as a wash. And I totally appreciate that there are ramifications that we don't know, and the future is ambiguous. But what we do know is what the potential impact could be on the bus route. And so given that, I am comfortable making a motion as written, with the understanding that we will absolutely explore adding more parking spots onto that block of El Camino when possible, or wherever possible, as well as exploring adding a handicap parking spot and seeing if there's space either there or around the corner on Santa Cruz.
Can I ask, what's the harm in waiting until we have the other crosswalk and the extra parking spaces? It's not going to hurt the mattress store and the vacuum repair store if we move the bus stop away from them, because I mean, I don't think.
So my perspective is, A, it's not going to happen today, right? We're talking about appeal, we're talking about February. And generally, I fear that there will be 100 different city council commission conversations for 100 different bus stops. And there are 100 different opportunities for people to say, let's wait until another crosswalk. And that is how public transit dies, where you know, death by 1,000 cuts, where we say like, well, this isn't so bad. And then ultimately, if I'm not going to be the voice for the people taking that bus route, I fear that we'll just kind of wait, and someone else will wait, someone else will say, wait. And then, you know, we were talking about a rapid transit lane in 2014 for El Camino, and here we are a decade later, and that's, you know, not going to happen. This is how some of these projects just delay for years and years.
I totally hear you on that. I'm also thinking out loud that we've just heard that ridership is up, and that's with the status quo. And so it's not, and we've also heard that right now the businesses are limping along trying to recover from COVID. And so it feels like we're not going to kill the bus line by having the status quo for another year, but we might kill Mama Coco's if we take away the status quo for a year. So if we could buy a couple of extra parking spaces, and we don't think the status quo is killing the bus line right now, and if the situation were reversed, I'm playing around here a little bit, but I also think that I don't want to waste staff's time with an appeal that they could be using to tighten the screws on Caltrans and get this crosswalk done sooner. So there's part of me that just thinks, I mean, if we punt on it until we get the crosswalk, and that might be another incentive to get the crosswalk done sooner.
Well, I wonder though, Katie, if I wonder if that's an effective way to influence Caltrans. You know what I mean? I don't know if Caltrans, I don't know. I guess I get concerned when we put the priority of like one governmental agency contingent on the priority of another government agency. It feels like those are really shifting sands, and then maybe like we're waiting for Caltrans and your time frame expires, and then like nothing ever happens, which is sort of what you're saying, Commissioner Silverstein. So I almost feel like it looks good on paper, but does it really work to say, okay, Caltrans, you know, we're holding up this bus stop until you get back to us? I think they're going to kind of shrug. I don't know, but you know, I don't know if that's an incentive.
Oh, I don't know that Caltrans is actually going to do anything about it. I just think if our staff have to do the whole thing where they bring it to council, that's a staff time that.
Can I quickly respond? If a crosswalk gets in, that doesn't prevent it from going to council anyway. So like, just because we have a crosswalk doesn't mean any decision we make in the future would get appealed or not get appealed. And then as far as the ridership goes, the fact that ridership for this bus line is increased, to me, isn't necessarily a function of that it's working perfectly. It's a function of necessity. And it's a function of how much more we should prioritize it. And if more people need Caltrain, then we should make it go faster. And if more people need BART, and if more people need our bus routes, then that is a sign that it's all that much more important, as opposed to saying, well, you know, a lot of people are using it, therefore it's good enough.
It's more like if it operated better, there might be pent up demand, you know, that would be released. if it's on the up.
If I can just jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So just on the schedule front, through Chris, we're basically talking about possibly an implementation timeline of February of next year. It is possible that we might know a decision on the kind of Ravenswood. Hopefully by then, I'm kind of with
Yeah.
an eye towards Hugh, see if he
Uh-huh.
would disagree with that again.
I
But-
agree.
Okay, yeah, so we might be able
Yeah.
to kind of have a decision by then, or
Right.
at least know a decision by then before we actually implement this, just
Yes.
so that kind of
Yes.
square up the timeline a little bit here.
Yes, it should. It should. I mean, I think that, I don't know if we recorded your words, Commissioner Silverstein, in the motion that you put forward, but I think that, and I don't think it's a small thing, but I'd almost begin a motion by saying, what we believe about the location of the stop. For example, like, we believe it makes sense, for our stop to be located closer to downtown and closer to the train station to facilitate, ridership and alternative modes of transportation, like sort of like a statement of, belief. And then say, however, we understand that there could be an impact on businesses. And for that reason, we would like to make it a priority or strongly recommend that we, advocate for the inclusion of creation of 2 to 3 more spaces on this block of El Camino as included in the plan, the Ravenswood plan.
I'm still a little bit confused. I thought the reason for this was reliability and speed, not access to the train, correct? The reason that this is being moved is because of the characteristics of the stoplights at Oak Grove versus Santa Cruz. Is that correct?
So there's a lot of parts with the movement, especially in Menlo Park with just like the smaller area. But so with this study, each city was a stakeholder, had multiple conversations with them, reviewed these stops with them as well. And so the stop movement was probably done in addition to increasing the bus service, but also better access to downtown.
Well,
And then also
the
that,
access to downtown, there's a whole bunch of development going on around Oak Grove anyway, right? So Santa Cruz is becoming a little bit diluted in terms of, being downtown. You can make a case that Oak Grove with all the development going on, is going to get all right.
That's true. There's a lot of parking right by Oak Grove because they built it.
So for me, I'm kind of on the other side saying I can't really find something compelling
Okay.
to actually make this movement. And then if I think about the priorities that the city council has, the top 4 or 5 priorities, safety and, I forget what the 4, this just doesn't resonate for me. And I'm just wondering if it's, okay to say no, just like, no, like, as much as I'm up for the ridership improvements, as much as we want to facilitate people taking the bus and connecting and all that kind of stuff, is that this isn't quite as compelling for me right now to make this change. So I kind of opt for the anti-side, personally.
I think I would be more, I understand what you're saying. One thing that I know that's a lot of downtown businesses are struggling with is employees finding parking. And I could imagine a more conveniently located bus stop from a more conveniently fast bus ride could actually benefit our businesses in some ways that we're not considering. But of course, we don't have any data right now on how many people downtown, how many of the workers downtown would avail themselves of this. And it's unfortunate because I think, that would have been useful for us to have.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a little bit to my point. If it was, emotionally, I'm up for it, but I can't find the compelling statistical argument to actually move it, what is effectively 1 block.
I have one more question. The the signal priority thing, does that not exist at the Oak Grove stoplight?
I'd have to check. I don't know the specifics of what signals have it, but
Okay.
I,
Because it sort of seems like if one stoplight has it and the other stoplight has it, like it would still be able to get through. Like I guess to, Commissioner Altman's point, like if it can have signal priority at Oak Grove, can it also have signal priority at Santa Cruz? And that it's a block away from the northbound side, like, is that? Okay, I guess it's the streamlining piece that we're working on. That's also part of this?
Yeah, it was my understanding that the signal priority is very relevant on where in the block the stop is. So it can't be right up against the intersection. The better off, further back in the block, the better. And then that, it was my understanding that was present on both Oak Grove and Santa Cruz. And then the difference between Oak Grove and Santa Cruz would be to space out the stops a little more evenly, to have it closer to Caltrain, closer to downtown, et cetera. And, but the signal priority is the reason why we wouldn't be able to have it on the other side of Santa Cruz, because that's not within the block.
Yeah, I feel like we're sort of, we're at the make a motion. to
Yeah,
do
I think we've
something.
discussed enough.
Yeah.
I'm happy to make a motion and then let's vote. And if people disagree, that's absolutely fine. Let's do it and move on.
Okay.
We've been tasked to adopt resolution.
So does somebody, you want to make a motion, Ross?
This is the first motion
Commissioner
I've ever made.
Silverstein?
So I move to adopt the resolution as written in the agenda, while adding verbiage that would instruct staff to explore and prioritize adding more parking spots where available on the rest of the El Camino Real block between Santa Cruz and Menlo Ave.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, is that a chair second? So in that case, we do have a motion and a second on the table. And just to clarify, the motion is to adopt the resolution. And then the additional kind of recommendation from the commission is to explore or the additional space along that block of El Camino, and then also kind of that general note about ADA spaces for yeah.
Not only the additional space that was written in the motion already, but any other additional spaces that
Yes.
could be
Right.
added towards that block. Yeah.
Yep,
Yes.
as a result of the other project that we mentioned. Yeah,
I think I'd probably
Got it.
add prioritize, explore and prioritize.
right. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion before we take a vote? No. Okay. So in that case, for those commissioners that would like to vote yes to the motion, if you can go ahead and just raise your hand and hold it up a little bit. So I have Commissioner Silverstein, Chair Cibrian, Co-Chair, Vice Chair Cole, and Commissioner Coleman. So that's 4 that would like to, commissioners that would like to dissent on this motion. If you can please raise your hands. I have Commissioner Altman, Commissioner Baruzzi, and Commissioner King, which means this is a 4-3 vote. That means the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next.
Thank you, everybody, for the rich discussion. It's a really hard choice.
Yes.
Yeah, as evidenced by our divided vote.
Yes.
Okay. My glasses back.
Kevin, would it be possible to give any information to the people who made a public comment about the appeal process?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd be happy to kind of share my contact information with the both of you.
Awesome.
I might have it. Hold on.
Through the chair, if we maybe take a 5-minute break, that would be.
Yep, that sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Chair. Yeah.
Okay.
So Chair, is your mic on?
We're on E3 now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer, can you introduce our Evaluate Commission Subcommittees item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I have 2 slides. I'm just gonna briefly go over them and then we can certainly open it up for discussion. But the item tonight is an opportunity for the commission to evaluate our subcommittees. As I mentioned before, and the commission kind of alluded to that previously as well. There's a desire to kind of synchronize our work plan with the subcommittees that we have that is available to us. So I thought I put together a couple of slides. The first slide is essentially the work plan that was previously approved at the last meeting. And then the second slide is a quick snapshot of all the subcommittees that we have, plus the members. And again, I believe at least with tonight's conversation, what I'm hoping that we can achieve is evaluate the list of subcommittees that we have, attempt to connect those subcommittees with the work plan. And in this case, I'm specifically referring to the bullet list because those are the actions that need to be taken within the next year or so as kind of structure that we talked about previously. And then whether or not we could consolidate, whether or not there's more subcommittees necessary as a result of trying to accomplish this bullet list. Obviously, that's part of the conversation tonight. So with that, I will conclude my remark and then happy to answer any questions or get the conversation going. Thank you.
I thought there was, Kevin, just adding to what you said, I thought there was this is a while ago, right? Was this the August meeting? Before that, July. I think there was a thought that we would maybe almost wipe our slate clean of existing committees, or at least reimagine what they should be given. Okay.
That
got
is
it.
absolutely an
All right.
approach that we can take as well. Yes. Whichever way is easiest for the commission here.
Any more clarifying questions from the commission before we take public comment?
Remind me where the Vision Zero action plan fits under these in the work plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Vision Zero action plan, I mean, in of itself, it identifies kind of key corridors, key areas of concern, right? So, and generally there are some measures that the plan will kind of get into, but ultimately the plan is a tool that would allow us to kind of identify those corridors and perhaps coupling them with other programs or policies that we have to really enhance. Because at the end of the day, we have projects, right? Which one do we want to do first, right? That's generally that priority, right? We have the transportation master plan, which has a lot of projects for years to come. And then we have our capital improvement plan, which is, typically a 5-year plan in of itself. So really is the Vision Zero then kind of what it would do, it would allow us to kind of look at the city, look at the corridors that are probably high collision, maybe or susceptible to high collision, and then picking and choosing projects accordingly as well. So I would kind of look at it that way. And then so like, for example, I think the NTMP, typically lately has been the one that we're trying to connect to the Vision Zero. And then we have other programs out there as well.
Okay, so I'm still confused though.
Okay.
I understand what the Vision Zero action plan is.
Yeah.
But what I don't understand is where on which of the 6 priorities here does it fit under number 1? I mean, because I assume the role of the commission is not complete with that, right? Is it?
My perspective is number 1,
Okay.
where the TMP is a enumerated list of all the various things that we might want to accomplish, and that should be prioritized and viewed with the lens of Vision Zero. But if
Great.
people disagree.
That makes
that's fine.
sense. That makes sense to me. I just want to be really clear on that because I think that's where it's coming.
Say that again.
Oh, so my perspective is that when we think about any project improvement we want to do as per the transportation master plan, it's a list of 100 different things, and we obviously need to prioritize. That should be viewed with a lens of Vision Zero. And anyone working within that subcommittee absolutely needs to have Vision Zero action plan in mind with that framework, with that mentality, you know, for safety reasons.
What's the difference between the Vision Zero and the Transportation Master Plan?
Vision Zero is a more specific methodology on how to evaluate projects. Transportation Master Plan is a little more holistic. Vision Zero would be a little more narrow thinking.
Transportation Master Plan is 250 pages detail, right? So Vision Zero is more detailed than the Transportation.
Not necessarily more detailed, but more focused.
It adds a prioritization lens.
The Transportation Master Plan has a prioritization.
Yeah, this is going to refine that.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, TMP is a living document. I think VZAP is going to refine it.
Right.
And-
So for example, the TMP, you know, when we went through the TMP, there were a lot of criteria that went into considering a project, and Vision Zero in the connection to safety would be one of them. So to kind of Commissioner Silverstein's point, you know, the goals within the TMP were safety, sustainability, mobility choice, and congestion management, versus the Vision Zero is strictly looking at safety, meaning.
So it's just a cut of the Transportation Master Plan. All it is saying of the projects on the Transportation Master Plan, these are related to Vision Zero. So it's just a categorization of.
Mhm. Sorry, Vice Chair, if you don't.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think this is important, because and Brian, I think we weren't at the last meeting, we talked a bit about Vision Zero. There was a presentation about it, and I've been on the Vision Zero committee, which is an excellent committee. The staff do a great job. But anyway, so Vision Zero is very specifically focused on a way of approaching transportation decisions where safety is a huge priority, and the goal is that there are 0 fatalities based on you know, cars hitting pedestrians and cars hitting bikers or whatever. And so it is a lens that we can use for when we evaluate projects, the Transportation Master Plan, but it's not just a category, it's a prioritization. And I think that is important. It's not just like, oh, these have to do with Vision Zero. It's a lens that you look at all the projects on and you prioritize them based on that if you commit to Vision Zero.
And a deeper dive, I would suspect that if you look at the Vision Zero plan, there are going to be statistics, information in there that the TMP did not cover, just because it's not, the TMP was a bigger realm.
The TMP is the starting point.
Right,
Then gets
and-
siphoned into the Vision Zero plan, and now that's your project lead.
If I
And Vision Zero
might,
contains
just-
tons and tons of data.
Mhm.
It's continuously updated around, like if you look at a map of Menlo Park, where are most of the collisions taking place and what are the nature of those collisions? So it's like updated data. That,
And
And the TMP is not updated.
yeah, the TMP hasn't been updated since it was created, to my understanding. But Vision Zero also doesn't need to be an absolute priority list. If we view things and something has a 0.1% chance of causing a fatality, and another project could provide an extreme amount of benefit in other ways, then we would obviously want to take that into account. It's not just saying like Vision Zero and then literally everything else, but again, it's a lens, it's a framework, it's a methodology.
And it's great that we have both.
Yes.
So I have a question for staff. In your ideal world, how would the commission be executing on item number 1? Because my sense is that staff have various frameworks, that your internal frameworks that you're using to prioritize. You have your own sense of prioritization, and it has to do with, you know, what's getting repaved and which grants are available. And, you know, where did we have a huge, horrible accident that city council wants to fix right now, and all this other stuff, right? And Vision Zero action plan is going to feed into that as well. What's the additive factor that what's a way that we can be helpful here and not muddy the waters? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you
no,
looking for here?
I think that's a great question, and I kind of appreciate that being one of the big ones to kind of talk about from the beginning. Of course, with an eye towards Hugh, because then Hugh can jump in and fill in the gaps that I might have missed. You're absolutely right. From a staff perspective, we we have a vision, right? We have the TMP, we have the capital improvement plan, which means at a minimum for the next 5 years, we know exactly which projects we want to do, right? And it will continue to be that way. We should be able to kind of lay that out, and maybe not to the specifics of project by project, but we have a general idea of what we want to do for the next few years. And that's a result of the TMP, the result of Vision Zero when it comes online. Perhaps we might want to reevaluate that order, see if there's a opportunity to kind of switch things around or not. But at the end of the day, there is an order that we are trying to achieve, right, with projects. So I think that as a commissioner, what we value from you is when we come to you with those plans, right? When we come to you with that 5-year program, when we come to you with the pavement projects, that you take a look at those programs and those projects and let us know whether or not you believe or you agree with that assessment, first and foremost. So, or perhaps that happens quite often in the past years is, when a project comes to the commission will evaluate the project, but then also come up with different ideas, which then subsequently will be added in the future as well. So I think that's where the commission's value is coming in from our end, or at least from my perspective, is really kind of taking another look at that list, whatever that list might be, and then assessing that list, making sure that we're on the right track, making sure that those projects are indeed should be that high in priority, because whenever we come to you, typically that means the project is within the next couple of years or so, right? So it generally means it's high priority. So whether or not they should be that high in priority. And also, hey, since you're looking at that project, I know that this kind of next street there's this issue for this street. Is it possible for you to include that into that scope? And then we'll assess whether or not we can accommodate that additional scope as well. So that's kind of how I see it.
So functionally, a TMP subcommittee the way it might operate is that it would meet with staff before you're at the point of bringing projects to us. It would meet with staff maybe on a semi-annual basis. And you would say, here's how, you always have sort of a rough plan, but here's a grant opportunity that we think we have coming down the pike. Here's 5 things we think we're going to do. Here's, does this make sense to you? Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think one really good example that kind of came to the top of my head would be kind of the middle field, where it was identified in the CIP plan. I believe the list came to the commission maybe 3 years ago, I want to say. And then we identified Middlefield as one of them. And then at that time, I think it was at the phase where we start really honing in the idea of using a repaving project to evaluate whether or not we can do improvements on top of that. We've done it in the past as well, but I feel like Middlefield kind of jumped to the forefront of my mind right now. So at that time, the TMP subcommittee, basically, we kind of came to the commission, came to the TMP subcommittee, kind of ran the idea through the subcommittee, and we sort of essentially got the blessing. And subsequently, when the CIP program got adopted, that's what we decided that, okay, we want to focus our time on the kind of the restriping portion of it. And hence, when Middlefield got restriped or resurfaced, we took the time. We already did kind of some of the evaluation and took the time and then did the road diet. So again, kind of in a very short amount of time, that's kind of typically how we've been able to kind of get the help from the commission.
I have a question. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the TMP and how it sounded like the functioning of the commission that sort of works in response to Commissioner Brucey's question, the way it works for staff well, in terms of TMP and the commission's input is, in your opinion, one, bringing projects to us during commission meetings, which we then say, give our agreement on or opinion, evaluation, whatever. But 2, that the staff working with a subcommittee of the commission, a TMP subcommittee, to maybe say, hey, take a look at this list of projects. Do these feel like the priority projects? Is that the way you would describe the best way for the subcommittee to interact with staff? It would be, hey, let's take a look at these projects that we're thinking of for the year. Here's how we're prioritizing them. Essentially, do you agree with this or not?
Right. So if we use the first bullet as an example, how I see this kind of progress would be staff, we prepare some exhibits that kind of represent what we consider to be transportation corridors. So north, south, east, west. I know we kind of took those away, but like essentially kind of those main corridors.
Yeah.
We would then bring those to the subcommittee and we would share them with the subcommittee and get your assessment on those maps. Do you feel like those are the right corridor to pick from? Are there, and for example, one of the points that Commissioner Silverstein mentioned, does it have to be a complete street corridor, or can we further separate that out into, we felt like this is really more of a ped and bike corridor, so we want to focus this to be more ped and bike centric versus this is a more vehicular corridor and therefore it should be more vehicular centric. So those are kind of the type of feedback that we'll be looking for from the committee or subcommittee at that time.
Okay, so 2 follow-up questions.
Yeah.
In your mind, after the subcommittee would opine about whether these are the right priorities or not, would it come back to the commission as like, hey, should we be looking at the corridors? Or would the subcommittee be saying, yes, go right ahead, and it doesn't come back to us?
Everything that is informed and discussed by the subcommittee will eventually come to the commission. The commission will then vote on that. The subcommittee is really there for 2 reasons. One, they are very interested in that topic. That's why they want to spend their own time.
Okay.
Because it's additional time that you're spending.
Okay.
Right. So you're really interested in those topics. And then 2, really kind of championing that effort as well. Right. So at that point, when we're coming to you, we have a product that is at least supported by that subcommittee.
Right.
So that's kind of the goal.
Right. I think the thing that I'm perplexed by, if I had to say, is that let's say there are people on the commission who really have deep knowledge and expertise in the bike corridors, but they're not on the TMP subcommittee.
I should have volunteered.
Okay. I mean, like, wouldn't you be sort of wanting them to be in that conversation? So it's an interesting subcommittee in that it covers all the topics, rather than maybe what you might have a deep expertise in.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly kind of the point right there. Because again, unless you're passionate about that topic, you probably wouldn't spend the extra time that you probably wouldn't have otherwise done to kind of focus on this.
Okay.
And once we have a clear view of which subcommittees or what subcommittees we're going to have, the next step that I will need to do, or we will need to do, is kind of clearly define those boundaries. Because you are right, with a TMP, it's very encompassing, right? So we want to make sure that we have clear boundary, because we don't want any of the subcommittees to overlap, because that would kind of we're running into a kind of a Brown Act violation if the subcommittees start having overlapping topics. So we want to make sure that we clearly define what those subcommittees should be doing.
So with 7 years of perspective on this commission, I want to say that I think that we may want to shift our focus to Brown Act buddies and ad hoc subcommittees that have very specific tasks. Like staff say at a meeting, before the next meeting, we want to meet with 2 or 3 people to go over yada, yada, yada. Because people's flexibility, there might be, I'm wondering if having official subcommittees doesn't kind of hamper some of that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, so here's kind of what I vision what the subcommittees would do. So what the first thing that I wanted the subcommittee to focus on is what's the bullet point, right? When a subcommittee, you are focusing on that bullet point because that bullet point is an actionable item. It's not something that's like, high level. It's an actionable item. We recognize that, you are part of a subcommittee, therefore you're dedicating your time, you want to be involved in the process. Therefore, we would try to accommodate your schedule into that overall project schedule. So meaning, because at the end of the day, you know, it could be as simple as, you know, maybe a month before the items should be coming to the commission, that we schedule a time with the subcommittees, sit down, get their buy-offs, get their feedback, incorporate that into the staff report that will eventually come to the commission, right? So that's kind of the sequencing. So what that means is it's going to add time to our schedule, obviously, because that's an additional meeting that is not previously anticipated. But we do recognize that that's something that the commission, or at least a couple commissioners, are interested in. We want to, you know, acknowledge that and dedicate that time for that project.
I mean, I don't want to speak for other people, and I'm curious what other people think, but my sense is I'm not sure what we gain by having standing subcommittees when people have travel plans or things that come up or things that they get interested in. And if you knew, for example, that in November you wanted, you know, ideally you and your team would want to meet with a subcommittee, a subset, you know, a sub-Brown Act, a sub-quorum of the Complete Streets Commission specifically to talk about corridors, then, you know, just having that quickly on the agenda and having people volunteer, yeah, this is something I'm excited about, and this month I have capacity, makes a little more sense to me than having a standing TMP subcommittee. Honestly, I've been on the TMP subcommittee, and I don't even remember the conversation you're talking about with Middlefield, although I do remember sending Nikki Nagaya a long email making the case to do what you ultimately did. So I'm very happy you did it. But I think it's a little more democratic. It gives more people opportunities to be involved. And
Can I ask
So-
can I ask just like a Brown Act logistical question? Is coordination among committee members temporal in nature, insofar that if, let's say, a couple people are working on Safe Routes to School as a ad hoc single project 1 month meeting subcommittee, then they disband. The next month, if a different set also work on Safe Routes to School, is that considered like contiguous, or is it break, or how does that work?
so Safe Routes is a little different. It's just great because there's like a regular.
Okay, pick a different example.
Well, I mean, there is kind of an interesting thing that you're talking about, because, you know, my understanding is that if we're talking about something that we haven't voted on yet, we shouldn't talk about it with different people. And when you're looking at long-term strategic plans, it can get a little dicey. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And to kind of Commissioner Peruzzi's point, so with the TMP subcommittee, I'm going to be focusing on the first 2 bullets, nothing else. So if there's going to be a TMP subcommittee, their focus should be on those 2 bullets and nothing else.
So then to me, that's not Vision Zero.
Right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. So if I look at the bullets, for the most part, they have a verb, and then they have a kind of a suggested, you know, end state.
Yep.
Right. For the most part.
For the most
right?
part,
So evaluate and propose sounds finite. Advise, not so much. You know, evaluate, update, evaluate. Those seem to me to be task oriented. So why can't just the subcommittees just be the 5 bullets? If the TMP is going to be evaluate and propose transportation corridors, why isn't that just a subcommittee? Why have the TM? Because when I read, you know, I've been on this for 2.5 years or whatever it is, and the way I read implementation was we were trying to get the transportation master plan in the lifeblood, not to pick and choose out of the TMP, right? So the word implementation can mean a lot of different things. So why have an implementation of the TMP? Why not just have the 5 bullets?
Yeah, no, perhaps I'm too bogged down with the terminology. It doesn't have to be the TMP subcommittee. It could be any name that you want. My main focus is that it's working on the bullet points. That's my main focus.
Yeah.
It could be
So
any name.
It could be,
Could be for however long. Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to just weirdly jump to an idea or a recommendation, and then I'll tell you why after, which I don't usually do. But when I look at this, I don't think you need a subcommittee for number 2, provide input on development projects.
Agree.
Number 4, which is support initiatives to improve access to downtown, or 6, advise the city and multimodal, because this is stuff that all of us should be doing all the time in the meetings. So I don't see a reason for a subcommittee. Where I do see a subcommittee making sense, I actually do see a subcommittee making sense in Transportation Master Plan. And maybe you just call it something like, Priority Project Review Subcommittee. I don't know. But because, for example, when you look at evaluate and propose key transportation corridors for project prioritization, I really see a usefulness to get like 3 people doing a major deep dive into the Vision Zero data and going, wow, it really looks like there's so many collisions on Willow between Ivy and whatever that like we need to get staff to come up with some concrete recommendations on this. And there's like an intense conversation based on some super data dive or whatever. And then once it gets to the commission, we're able to say, we worked with staff on this. We looked at the data for the past 5 years, all this other stuff. And, as a result, we think, and hopefully it's time saver, the 3 people on that committee say, we looked at these 2 options and we chose this one. What do you guys think? It seems like that's a time saver when there's a vast amount of work that goes into maybe some of these policy recommendations and analysis. So that's where I think the subcommittees are useful in those specific kinds of priorities. And in the same way, evaluate the Safe Routes to School program. We've never evaluated it. Obviously, it was a council stated priority at one point that this commission evaluated. So how long would it take for the entire commission to do that as one body of 7 people? That would take a really long time. And I don't even know if that's suitable for a meeting. I would say, yeah, sure, break that off into 3 people and roll up their sleeves and meet with the Safe Routes to School program and look at all the data and actually evaluate it.
I totally agree with everything you just said. Can I make one suggestion?
Yep.
Absolutely agree, except I think Vision Zero needs to be added to this as a separate thing, because the way we were at least talking about when we did our work plan, the evaluate key transportation corridors was really thinking about how do people get from neighborhood to neighborhood. And it was these transportation corridors. And I think Vision Zero is independent of that. And given kind of the presentation we got last night or last meeting and the more information we've got, I think it would benefit us if we had a subcommittee that was able to dive into those intersections, dive into those potentials, and then come back and say, hey, these are the Vision Zero findings and priorities on top of anything else that's written here.
So the only point I would speak to that would be, to the extent possible, I would try to see if we can consolidate that to evaluate and propose key transportation corridor for project prioritization. To your point about kind of taking a deep dive into Vision Zero, my goal is try not to have too many subcommittees, as I say, because we have too many subcommittees. At some point, we're going to need to kind of set the boundaries of what they should be working on. So to the extent possible, I would prefer that we try to keep that task within that subcommittee.
So hold on, another idea. If what the most important thing are these 2 bullets under the TMP, thing here to get accomplished this year, what if the subcommittees are the prioritization of transportation corridor subcommittee is 1, and then 2 is Middle Avenue Complete Streets Project subcommittee. I think with the crossing, I think with the El Camino and the bike underpass.
Yeah, so with Middle Avenue and the crossing, I mean, it's one of those where at this point we do have very clear guidance on what they should be.
Okay.
So we know what we need to do with Middle Avenue, the Complete Street project. We know what we need to do with the crossing project. I think at the time of us kind of discussing the work plan, there's still a desire to at least keep it on the books, so to speak, in case something new comes up. But at this point, the only
that
thing
could go in front of the whole commission then. Maybe
right,
that's
yeah,
not a subcommittee.
I think the only thing that really needs probably input from a subcommittee, if you so chooses, would probably be the signal stuff, the middle and
the El
Camino.
Oh, I love
and
that.
some of the improvements that we are
that's
anticipating for that area. That would be probably one element that could use a subcommittee if there's someone that wants to.
No, I
but
agree
it doesn't
with
have
that.
to.
I agree with that partly because we learned tonight that, we need to push Caltrans along and, we can help prioritize. But also that was a really excellent, I think that was like the June meeting maybe, but I'm not sure who was there, or if all of us were there, but I thought that was a really thoughtful presentation by staff, like really analyzing each one of those El Camino intersections. And we know they're really important, and safety is huge there. So what if the subcommittees would be like, okay, transportation corridors, like, what would you want to call that? Key signal projects or something? What were you calling that thing?
You sure you wouldn't want to have that be part of the same subcommittee?
Well, then
Have
that
the
sounds
same
like the
subcommittee
commission.
do the work? Yeah.
But maybe it's El Camino intersections or something. I mean, that in of itself is a pretty big work stream. I think that, especially if the corridors are connecting the network, I think that's a big enough work stream as it is, but in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we can wordsmith on the naming a little bit later, but if there's a desire to do that, we can certainly kind of, I would prefer that maybe we have that conversation about whether or not that we want that subcommittee, and we can just work on the names a little bit later too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just move on with spitballing the subcommittees. And then I guess, so I would say those two, and then safe routes, I think we said Vision Zero. And then this one, number 3, it seems like some very, very discrete asks, like the site distance policy for the driveways and the impact analysis guidelines. So I would say that, is that even a subcommittee, or is that just like an ad hoc project? Or I don't know what people think about, like how many people from the commission would need to work on either of those two things to help staff. I mean, that could be like one person for each of those. I don't know if it needs a whole
Well,
subcommittee.
how many driveways are we talking about?
I don't know. I don't know.
If it's every single driveway in Menlo Park, it's gonna take the whole team.
Right. So I think that one's, I think what we have in mind, what staff have in mind, obviously we have kind of the robo question, right? The robo appeal, which we got very clear guidance from the city council that it's not something that the council wanted to kind of entertain in terms of just doing it every single time.
Right.
So our next step is actually, we're going to go back to the city council at some point. And the idea is, kind of introducing some idea on how to move this step forward. And so we have our kind of own sort of plan on how we want to move this idea forward. If there's a commissioner here that is interested in, being that part of the process, we're more than happy to kind of create that ad hoc subcommittee to have that conversation. But if not, there's no need for a subcommittee.
Yeah. So this is when the council, the decision was appealed on Roble. The council agreed with the appeal.
Right.
The commission's decision was overturned. And then the feedback they gave the staff was, hey, you guys need to sort of come up with an approach for these parking removal decisions. Okay.
Exactly.
So staff could just do that on their own, then come back to us with like, here's a new approach. What do you think? Or if there's anyone on here who wants to like interact with staff around it, they can. Otherwise, no subcommittee.
Right, exactly. Because our next step is to go to the city council with the appeal itself, because we still need to close that matter. It's not officially closed yet, but then also kind of the next steps of what we're thinking about approaching that topic.
So I'm on that one, I would say, I don't think there's a need for subcommittee. If there's anyone here who's interested in interacting with staff closely before they present a policy about driveway stopping site distance to the commission, please reach out to Kevin. The other one, update the transportation impact analysis guidelines to include multimodal study metrics. I would feel comfortable staff taking the lead and not having a subcommittee. And you guys present to us when you
warrant
come up
a
with that.
subcommittee on that. I'm not necessarily volunteering. But I think that might be a broader
Okay.
project, and thinking about like the pros and cons of various transportation impact analysis methodologies. But if no one's actually interested, then it's a moot point.
Kevin, when is the TIA, when are staff thinking they would update that?
Thank you. I was about to jump in with kind of a quick update. So kind of similar to the driveway stopping site policy, we do have an intent to go to the city council with at least an outline of the next steps. So if there's no strong desire from any of the commissioner here to be super involved in the process, what I recommend is perhaps we let that meeting take place, let that item take place. And then depending on the kind of the direction that we're moving forward to, we can always come back to this commission and see if there's any one particular commissioner that desires to make up a subcommittee for that. If not, it could just be business as usual.
All right, so you'll flag it for us.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because we do have we have an item that is intended to go to the city council with some with some outlines on what we want to do here. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I know at various points, Vice Mayor Taylor has asked staff about whether or not it makes sense to pursue relinquishment of Willow Road from Caltrans. And I don't know whether that's actually something that staff is evaluating or thinking about, or but that's also, I mean, looking at some of these subcommittees, considering what that would mean is interesting. I just don't know if it's a back burner thing or
I would definitely consider that to be a back burner. It's not something that is, but let me put it this way. It was not one of the priorities given by the city council.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I toss an idea out just and listening to people, like, as I'm sort of hearing where conversations need to happen, just as a thought to subcommittees and or sort of short terms. Like, I see one of them just using the like bullet point thing that you could have a subcommittee specifically looking at transportation corridors, right? Like, you're going to be using the TMP for it, but really the thing is you're looking at transportation corridors. So maybe some of it is in the naming convention, like picking things that are very specifically help narrow the focus, having one that is specific to Vision Zero, having one like even a short-term one. I know Commissioner Altman, like the driveway stopping distance was something you would express interest, not that you have to still like it, but right. And then I do think the safe routes to school thing sort of needs its own thing because of its specific evaluation of an actual program. And so it's not necessarily looking at routes across town. It's specifically looking at our safe route to school program. And so I would leave that one. But the thing that's not on here, and somebody can help me figure it out where it would fit, but that we do spend quite a bit of time talking about, I am kind of intrigued with the idea of sort of a traffic calming subcommittee, because I think some of it would actually sort of like wind its way into Vision Zero, because some of that traffic calming will have to do with that. But I just feel like how we decide to make traffic flow in town has, it's a nice subcommittee topic. So anyway, those are just some thoughts I had about how we would make them.
Is your vision on a traffic calming subcommittee where they would look at traffic calming applied to specific streets? Or would it be looking at what are good practices for traffic calming and best practices and dive into the literature and then could come back to the committee or the commission and talk about that? Because if it's the former, I think that's more Vision Zero of like, how do we make sure that people aren't driving too quickly and hotspots and anything there? If it's the latter, that might be a reasonable subcommittee if anyone wants to think about what is our traffic calming like framework and what methodologies should we use under which circumstances and things like that. But maybe that's also a staff thing. I don't know.
Could it be where an incident occurs that there's no traffic calming measures there, and we evaluate the incident and we say, well, if there was traffic calming, would that incident not occur?
I think
So
that's
maybe
what
like
Vision
that
Zero
on
is.
the spot need. Sorry, go ahead. That's it.
Sorry for interrupting. That's basically what the Vision Zero action plan is doing, though. It's looking at previous incidents and then like anticipating future incidents based on, data.
So would
and
that
stuff.
wrap in like traffic calming?
Well, I mean, I think
Can it be at its own?
If I can
Group?
jump in here, I think the short answer is no, because the Vision Zero sort of the corridors has been identified. And I believe like those are generally more like the main corridors, like your Willows, your Sandhills, versus the NTMP. At the end of the day, is still more local collector driven. So I think Mayor Nash might have said this last night, but if you overlay the map of the Vision Zero with the map of the NTMP request, they don't align.
Yeah.
They don't. So it's essentially kind of two separate things. And to Commissioner Coleman, Commissioner Silverstein's point, if there is a desire on an NTMP subcommittee, I would envision the latter, because some of the guidance that we got last night was, we want to do instead of asphalt concrete speed hump, we would be willing to entertain plastic ones, which we haven't due to noise concerns in the past. I believe some additional measures were mentioned as potentially alternatives beyond just speed hump. So I think chicane was mentioned as well, which does involve some parking spaces removal, but we could be strategic about it. So if there is and that those are things that we are going to bring back ultimately to the commission as well as part of the NTMP process, right? So I could envision if there's a desire for NTMP subcommittee, then that would be the latter. We will kind of have those proposals ready, run those by the subcommittee first before we come to the commission, and kind of doing it that way. That's what I would envision that subcommittee be doing.
If Vision Zero is its own subcommittee, I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subcommittees.
Sorry, could you say you were counting something? Could you remind
Oh,
us
what I
which
was
ones you're
having,
referring to?
so like transportation corridors is one. Vision Zero would be another. The driveway thing, like, I know it's not a long-term subcommittee, but it's still a small group of people operating outside the commission that would be coming up with like what would be our criteria. And then, so that could narrow us down to 4, but
I thought
and
we
then-
said that that wasn't going to be a subcommittee. I thought no one really expressed interest and he said, we'll be working on it.
No, my point is standard policy.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
That was an example of it.
Yeah.
But the idea that there would be standard policies for things like that was actually my point, not specifically for driving.
Right.
Yeah.
So it could be that that driveway thing, I'm using driveway as a stand-in for it, but really that might be the subcommittee for looking at policies,
That
which
is
was,
So we don't
Yeah.
have a situation where we're using criteria different from city council.
right.
I love that idea, Brian.
I don't know. I think what I heard staff say is that they don't need us to do a subcommittee on that. They'll bring us something.
Yeah.
Because they have a plan. They kind of have an idea of what they want to do.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And so we could get in there and play around, but like, if nobody really wants to, there's no need point in committee.
No, but I think independent of the driveway specific policy, there's a question on whether or not it's reasonable to have a subcommittee around standardization. What is our
there you
policy
go.
for this? What is our crosswalk like?
Using that as an example.
Yeah.
And the failure point where the council uses something.
Yeah, so that
I like that.
everything doesn't get appealed and go back, and that we know what we want to do, and then we can standardize
Plus,
that.
we're not adding extra committees and removing the helpfulness of our teams.
Okay, so then so then standardization, I like that. And then the Safe Routes to School subcommittee, and then the NTMP subcommittee.
So actually, I'm still confused about why we need to have a separate Vision Zero. I mean, if Vision Zero is 90% analyzing corridors, and we're talking about analyzing corridors, like wouldn't the same people be doing that?
And I want to kind of echo maybe Commissioner Peruzzi's point. If possible, I would prefer that we have that one subcommittee to focusing on the corridor project prioritization, but then also kind of tagging on to that scope of evaluating the intersections, et cetera, because I think there is a connection there, and I would prefer that we combine the two there. I see Hugh on there, so.
That there's a deliverable.
I don't-
If there's something in the Vision Zero that's a deliverable, implement Vision or whatever. So there's a verb and a deliverable, right? So like it's, proposed transportation corridors, that's very discreet. That's pretty clear. So if something around Vision Zero is like, well, is it?
Using
what
the
is
Vision Zero
discrete thing that we would do? Or is it like it is in the first paragraph, all encompassing that we look at everything that we do, including the corridors from a Vision Zero lens.
Yeah, I see transportation corridors and Vision Zero as being very different. I mean, transportation corridor for me, I think about, can someone from Bellhaven walk to downtown safely, bike to downtown safely? Can someone from West Menlo Park go to Allied Arts, bike to Allied Arts safely? Those to me are thinking about corridors. When I think about how do we expect people to get from place A to place B, that's a corridor. Vision Zero is thinking about intersections, thinking about right turns, thinking about where people are going too fast. That's not a corridor. That's a danger.
Okay.
We need to
Okay.
keep our people safe.
So,
Can I jump in here just to maybe just a little bit? Because I think that I agree with the basic principle that a Vision Zero subcommittee probably doesn't make sense. In the short term, we've got a very tight deadline we have to hit to complete the plan. And so I don't think there's a lot of room in the calendar. And then once we have that plan established and in place, it's actually going to influence all of these things. And so it'll definitely be a lens kind of in the way Commissioner Silverstein was saying, as we think about the corridors, it'll be a lens as we think about safe routes to school. It'll be something that influences the way we think about policy decisions that we might make. It really will touch everything we do with this very focused safety lens. And it will look, I think the high injury or high collision corridor map that we've been sharing is kind of eye-catching and people lock onto that. But that's just one of several things that we're going to look at. It will look at all types of streets, and it won't look at like street by street what you do for all type of streets, but it will help sort of set strategies for different types of streets. So it'll influence NTMP, it'll influence everything. So I wouldn't want to pull it out separately because it's going to be in everything else. And it's certainly going to be a resource that we hope, I hope that we use across all of the work that we do. But I don't think it needs its own specific subcommittee. It doesn't get implemented separately. It gets implemented in everything, if that makes sense.
okay, so if that's off the table, then I personally do not agree with combining, create a network and prioritize corridors. And by the way, Russ, just to check in with you, when you talk about that, are you talking about like bike ped corridors exclusively, or is this about like that group is also thinking of driving?
I would also want to think about driving, and if those corridors are the same, we need to make sure that it can handle both.
Right.
And if they're different, then,
Right.
So I think most people can agree that like Willow Road is a driving corridor
Yes.
from one place to another place.
Okay, I'm just
It
checking.
might not be a bike corridor,
Yeah.
but yeah, thinking about, again, how people get from one place, like through our city as opposed to through, yeah, that's, anyway.
Yeah. So while I see the while I see the El Camino intersections, obviously like overlapping with corridors and everything, I do think that's, okay, now Katie's talking. Okay, so my point of view here is that while I do think that the intersection redesigns that the staff has shown us for El Camino and those key, I think it was like 4 intersections, of course, pertain to corridors. I think from a workload and bandwidth perspective, the corridor people should focus on the corridors and the networks. And I would suggest a different group of 2 people on a subcommittee, like working on looking at the El Camino intersections. Unless, Kevin, you don't feel that the staff needs any pre-commission meeting interaction with, a subcommittee around El Camino. I think the El Camino intersections are particularly complicated because there was a lot of signage questions, remember, and sort of signaling. And I know that you and I exchanged some photos after that around different things I was seeing around town and whatnot.
Right. El Camino is a little bit trickier because, so Hugh presented kind of that vision
is
of
tricky.
El Camino, right, in front of the commission. So I think there's kind of that base, there's that baseline, right? And then there's kind of the Samtrans baseline of like bulb outs, which, we typically would include anyway. So I'm kind of just speaking out loud here that, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the vision is fairly clear. And at that point, it's probably coming to the commission, maybe with refinements here or there.
Okay.
So right now, I really don't see the value in having a subcommittee.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can just say, I think the spirit is right on, Commissioner Cole. I think that, and the way Kevin has suggested is like when we have a specific project that's gonna need a focused look. So like we don't have the staff capacity to pursue all of those things that I shared with you a few months ago, right? Like we have individual projects that are moving forward, and as we have capacity and as we get direction from council, more could come onto it, but we don't have the time to even do more work on some of those, much less have a subcommittee for them. But like middle will be happening. And so it could be sensible to have like an ad hoc subcommittee if people are really interested, but it'll be real nerdy. So only the nerds are allowed.
I would love to be one of those
what's that?
nerds.
Okay, cool. Yeah, great. So, but I think we could pick that up when we have that. And it's probably like a meeting or two for those kinds of things, because, and then, there may be a similar thing depending how our kind of conversations go on Ravenswood when that new crosswalk comes across, where it might make sense, to, if we have some things. But as Kevin says, there is a little bit of level where it's like, we're going to do whatever we can get we get Caltrans to agree to, whatever we can convince them is a good idea. So it can be, sometimes that's a little bit like, once we get past the Caltrans hurdle, like we're going to breathe a big sigh of relief and just try to move forward. But I think for middle in particular, there's some value in bringing people, and then maybe that same group of people will inevitably kind of be the same group, although of course, as people transition off, as other intersections kind of come to the fore through other projects or as part of some other direction.
Well, I definitely think we want to leave the lines of communication open where staff feels like there's a really big priority project that, like a quick subcommittee could assemble around. I think the commission should be open to that. I do have a question, Hugh, because one of the reasons you were describing, the need for a subcommittee or the need to argue, or the argument that we don't need one, is it based on kind of where the project is in terms of its timing? So one thing I'd like to just ask is, based on the timing of the Bellhaven traffic calming plan, do you see a value in having a subcommittee for that one? And the reason that would assist staff in some way to help with implementation or public outreach, things like that. The reason I ask is that I know that in our public comments, in this past 6 or 9 months, we've had a couple people kind of say, we don't know if we're being kept in the loop from Bellhaven. How do we get more information? Sort of asking us those questions. So given that I believe that that plan is going to be in execution, right, in construction?
It's under construction, yeah. I would say, excuse me, sorry. I would say the idea is a really good idea. How I would recommend executing it is, instead of having a Bellhaven subcommittee, that it be part of the NTMP, because one of the elements that describe as part of the NTMP, there's an equity lens that we're trying to explore as well. So that kind of goes back to the idea of what else can we do in Bellhaven specifically? There's the equity question. So I think the spirit is there. I just wouldn't do that to the Bellhaven traffic calming plan, because that one's already under construction. It's basically done. It will be done in a few months, but I think the spirit can be inherited into the NTMP subcommittee if there's a desire to have one. Again, we all know that your time is valuable, so we don't want to.
Yeah.
We don't want to do things that you're not interested in.
So I've been trying to capture where we are now. I think we have the Transportation Corridor Subcommittee.
Right.
We would have a Safe Routes to School Subcommittee. There's a Standards Subcommittee, and then NTMP Subcommittee. Is that where we were?
Right.
you
I have
repeat that?
transportation
I'm sorry, can you repeat-
corridor. I have transportation corridor, safe route to school, possibly NTMP, and possibly middle.
And standardization.
Standards or policies as well.
I don't think they should.
Oh, I thought there was
I-
there was
yeah.
definitely a group of people who were excited about the
Okay.
standards. I wasn't one of them, but there was definitely a quorum.
Yeah, if I can just maybe echo something Kevin said earlier, policy stuff is going to be important, and I think we can have it's a little unclear to me, like a standing subcommittee on policy. Like we'll have to meet around specific projects, and again, like Kevin's admonition to sort of, it has to be in the bullets, kind of, because we can't create new additional work at this stage that goes beyond, I think, what we already have as direction kind of from council or things that we're working on. So I don't see us doing a broad look at policies within, kind of the transportation division at this stage. That's potentially a very large thing and not something that in any way could fit within the workload. So we do have some policy items that are listed here that we are going to work on. They probably don't make sense even necessarily for the same people always, because different people have different interests, but we could organize something around one of those. But I'm a little bit, unless I'm misunderstanding, unclear what that group would be intending to do that sort of fits within the work plan that we have.
I would answer to it, I think, and partly now I'm not really sure, but I think it kind of came out of the evaluate driveway stopping site distance policy as a thing that people would do. And then, but that wasn't like an end on its own. Like that is part of this kind of larger process of looking at how we approach removing parking. Like what are the kind of, what are the steps that we're taking? And so that inside of a subcommittee, because there was some interest, like that folks would be looking at that particular thing that is on our work plan, but also because that's not the only thing. And so I guess that was where the idea of just sort of like transportation, like the standardization of things, but
Okay.
I
Yeah. So if we start with that one, and then as other ones are kind of we can absolutely have a subcommittee that kind of jumps from thing to thing.
Right, agree. I think having a subcommittee that is just on a policy doesn't really quite make sense. But as we kind of bring those specific policies to you, at that point, if there's a desire for an ad hoc subcommittee, I think that's the route we would go to. So that's hence kind of the driveway. There was at least one desire, so that's why it was brought up. So the next policy that we're going to work on, obviously you guys would know about that at that time comes. And at that point, if there's still a desire to have an ad hoc subcommittee to work on that policy, we can do so at that time. I think that would be a more valuable. Exactly. We were kind of taking them in as needed rather than having this standalone subcommittee that is just kind of floating out there.
So we would have 3 subcommittees and room for these kind of standalone ad hoc committees as they might come up. Is that?
Yeah, I don't think the ad hoc versus like permanent. I think we're maybe giving it too much credence, to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Okay.
Let's just call them all ad hoc subcommittees. How's that?
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
They're all gonna last as long as we find them useful.
So far I have transportation corridor, safe route to school. Those are definitive. NTMP and middle are still up in the air.
I'd be pretty supportive of an TMP one, I feel like, but maybe, I don't know. I'm also not a really
Is that a
good
priority?
active
Is that a priority
subcommittee
this year?
member.
For NTMP? Absolutely. Yep. The deliverable, at least, the things that we're going to evaluate are additional measures beyond just speed humps. So what would we like to include? So chicane was the example that I gave. Plastic speed humps was another example that got brought up. So basically, whether or not we want to include those as part of the plan. Equity was another element that we'll probably have to evaluate as part of NTMP. And then the kind of one I think that's key would be the process itself. I think there was a desire to, like for example, using using the resurfacing program or the paving program to see if there's ways that we can do outreach and kind of have that public input of something to be done without all the surveys and all the signature collections, et cetera. So those are concrete items that the NTMP will be evaluating.
I recommend watching the meeting last night. It was on,
It was, but it came off.
I don't know why it wasn't on our work plan.
I feel like that what you just said should be.
Oh, maybe because they pitched a proposal. Staff brought it to council last night. We saw it earlier. Staff brought it to council last night as a study session. And council gave a lot of direction that wasn't necessarily uniform or aligned, which means staff have a lot more work to do.
Right. And eventually
So
it will
it
come
might-
to, it'll come back to the commission. That's why if there's a desire for a subcommittee,
Okay.
it's perfectly fine.
Definitely worth watching that part of the meeting from last night.
Yeah, if you're gonna be on the subcommittee, you have to watch last night's meeting. It's a requirement. And you have to watch the whole pool part too. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
So perhaps with, if the chair is willing to entertain, perhaps what we can do is let's go down the list of the subcommittees and just see if we have any volunteers. Maybe that's a kind of a good, easy way to see whether or not we're gonna have those subcommittees.
Yeah, can I,
Sure.
before the chair does that, may I just say, can we just, as she's doing that, or maybe at the end, raise whether we want a middle committee or not? I've been thinking about it quite a bit, Middle Avenue, and the only reason I think it might be useful is
Mhm.
that that was such a big, well, it's such a big project for the city, and we put so much effort into the launch. I just want to make sure the commission stays focused on the execution, because there were a lot of things that the public really asked us to stay on top of. For example, like what were the different behaviors or traffic patterns that might be seen on some of the side streets and things like that. And I just don't want it to slip through the cracks. I think we put a lot of work into it. So it's my 2 cents.
So procedurally, if we could, I completely forgot that we haven't officially taken public comments. So if we can maybe take public comments, or at least call for public comments, and then we'll come back and start looking at members for the subcommittees.
All right. Matthew, can you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees on Zoom who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or a cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name, and then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtual hands raised, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, so now we're to this part where we go through the subcommittees and see who wants to join them.
Right.
Would you like to do that, Transportation Engineer Kevin?
Thank you very much. So let's start with the Transportation Corridor Subcommittee. Again, what I envision this subcommittee to be doing would be kind of focusing on the first bullet of one, which means at some point, the city staff will come to the subcommittee with some proposals on corridors that we identify. Conversation would be revolving about, whether or not those corridors make sense, whether or not there's a specific mode that we want to prioritize, et cetera. So I envision the end product to be essentially a map, if you will, that identifies the corridors, perhaps going to different classifications or categories, stuff like that. So is it? So far, I have, sounds like 3 very certain, and then middle, which we're saving at the end, which is kind of still up in the air. And NTMP. Yeah. So with anyone interested in being the subcommittee, again, okay.
Which one's this?
This is the corridor. So basically going up and down the city.
I'm also interested in this, but I also want to make sure that we cover all of them. So I'm kind of flexible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll just write down the name for now. It's not official voting. I just kind of taking a straw poll. So we have a Vice Chair Ko, Commissioner Silverstein, and then possibly Commissioner Peruzzi. Okay, great, thank you. So the Safe Route to School, I believe we currently have that subcommittee, and we have Commissioners Peruzzi, Cyprian, and King. Obviously, we're kind of taking a very new look at this, but if any desires to kind of stay on, or if there's new commissioners that want to be part of, feel free to kind of voice that now.
I could step off this to give space for somebody who's got a kindergartner.
Okay. All right, so I have Commissioner Silverstein. Anyone else that want to? I guess that would be.
I
sorry
feel
to-
like I should stay on it because I just use so many safe routes to school.
One thing that it's good to know is that there's a task force meeting that happens on weekday mornings, and yeah, I know. So I'm just making sure there's always somebody who can cover it.
Okay. So we have Commissioner King as the kind of standby for now.
Commissioner King, do you have one that you're excited about of the subcommittees?
Oh.
Oh.
Right.
I would stay on if for another 6 months if nobody else is interested, but I'm also, I mean,
My timing with work is really stuck. I
Understood.
would love to be a part of these committees. It's going to take me a few months to clean up my personal time.
Understood. Okay.
I might
so-
stay on since I'm only on the commission for 6 more months. And
Okay.
then, yeah. Got a little senioritis going on.
Okay, so well, in that case, put in Commissioner Peruzzi. Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay, yeah, so the Safe Route to School, I forgot to kind of mention, obviously, task force meetings, one tomorrow. So hopefully one of you guys can, I don't know if there's one of you attending already, but the other thing is kind of the evaluation, which if some of you recall, the last time we connected with the subcommittee was about the survey that went out, which we subsequently have the results for. So eventually we'll be kind of coming to the subcommittee with those items as well. So do kind of stay tuned for those. Okay, so next we have, sorry, so we just concluding that Safe Route to School, we have Commissioner Silverstein, Chair Cibrian, and then Commissioner Peruzzi. With so the next one would be the NTMP subcommittee. So hopefully I'm not going to repeat myself. I think I kind of described what that subcommittee would be kind of looking to do. So okay, so we have Commissioner Altman. Anyone else interested?
I definitely have an interest, although I will say that sometimes I overextend how much time I think I have. But
Right.
I definitely have an interest in it, so I'm happy to make space for somebody else who wants to do it. But if not, I will do my level best to be a good participant.
Okay, so okay, so we have Commissioner Altman and Chair Cibrian. Okay, last but not least, Middle Avenue. So Middle Avenue Subcommittee. Again, I think the focus for this main subcommittee would be once we have the evaluation of Middle and El Camino, that would be the item that will be expected to bring to the subcommittee. Okay, so that would be Commissioner King and Vice Chair Cole. Am I right? Okay, great. Excellent. And I do apologize in advance. This do take time. So even though we're forming the subcommittees right now, it might be a few months before we can actually meet. But I'll try to keep apprised of the subcommittees of any progress milestones that we can make. Okay, great, awesome. Any other discussions, thoughts before I kind of maybe ask the chair to make this into a motion, and then we probably want to vote on this. Okay.
You want me to have a go at it, or are you going to tell me what you think it is
Well,
already?
Sure. Yeah. Basically, we're gonna probably probably the easiest way would be maybe we're just about disband the subcommittees, and then we're gonna form 4 new subcommittees, as we kind of title them Transportation Corridor Subcommittee with Commissioners Cole, Vice Chair Cole, Commissioner Silverstein, and Peruzzi. We have the Safe Route to School Subcommittee with Commissioners Silverstein, Peruzzi, and Chair Cibrian. We have the NTMP Subcommittee with Commissioner Altman and Chair Cibrian. And we have the Middle Subcommittee with Vice Chair Cole and Commissioner King. Sounds about right? Okay, so if I can have a motion for that and then a second.
Okay, anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have the chair motion and then Commissioner Peruzzi second. Those like to vote yes, if you can please raise your hands. Great, I'm seeing unanimous votes. Thank you. Appreciate the effort on this. Hopefully that will make our subcommittee a little bit more transparent,
Focused.
and the effort would be greatly appreciated there.
Yay, us. Right, under informational items, city staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The one informational item tonight is update on major project status. Kevin, can you?
Great, thank you. Actually, I think most of the items here, I've kind of mentioned them at one point or the other. So Bellhaven traffic calming plan, construction underway. In terms of sequencing, we're going to do terminal, Ivy, and the new bridge. So that's kind of the sequence that we're looking for right now. I think I mentioned the Altshup bike lane, the block between AV and Harkins. We are anticipating possibly, not we, the county, for Coleman and Ringwood, another public meeting sometime in October. So once we have the date, we'll make sure to share that with the commission. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
I noticed the new buffered bike lanes on Willow through Bellhaven.
Oh,
The-
so-
The
yeah.
bike lanes have buffers now where they didn't before.
I'm
on-
sorry.
On Willow Road through Bellhaven.
Oh, Willow Road through Bellhaven.
Yeah,
Yes.
the bike
Yeah,
lanes
yeah.
are wider, buffered. Good.
Yes.
Yes. There's a lot of debris in them, and I don't know if Caltrans is in charge of street sweeping, but I was gonna just mention that because I
Okay.
think maybe more people will be using them, but they looked like they needed to be.
Look into that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, thanks.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about
Yeah.
that Willow overpass and the concrete sectioned off part that doesn't seem to get cleaned. Yeah.
Oh.
So let's see, Matthew, can you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For virtual attendees on Zoom who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. Then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. Seeing no virtual hands raised, I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. So do we have any reports or updates from our soon to be disbanded subcommittees?
Hello.
Thank you so much for all your time and service. All right, so I think that we are done. Thank you, everybody, for great discussion tonight.
Have a good night.